will begin to arrive in African countries this week. African Union President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa said African Union aims to ship 50 million doses by December in a bid to curb the spread of COVID-19 in Africa. Meanwhile, Health CS Muthui Kagwe has warned the public against disobeying COVID-19 protocols. Kagwe, who met his Tanzanian counterpart Ruto Gwajima to discuss strategies to combat the virus in both countries, urged teachers to get immunized because they are dealing with students who are asymptomatic.
The students are essentially asymptomatic, and the problem becomes when they pass it on to the teachers. So hopefully the teachers will accept and agree that they all should be vaccinated. Workers in schools, workers in primary schools, secondary schools and elsewhere should also be vaccinated. And they are frontline workers, and we have considered them as such.
Gwajima indicated that the two countries will provide guidance on cross-border strategies.
COVID ni tatizo la kidunia, tatizo la Afrika. Lazima tuangalie namna gani halitatudhuru sana, maisha yaendelee, uchumi uendelee, ustawi wa jamii uendelee, kwa kuweka makubaliano yanayotufanya wote tuwe na amani kama watu tunaoishi kwenye eneo moja. Sisi kazi yetu kama wenye dhamana za afya, kwa ushirikiano na wataalamu wetu, ni kutranslate the visions of our leaders to become the reality.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto.
You know, when you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to steal.
The guys who quote the Bible and say I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us, assert our will.
When the legislature are now being taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality. We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi Lokop is Jeshi Lawokop?
I can't say it very well. No, Muthui Jeshi Lokop.
And everyone knows. Okay.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. SpiceFM, Nyeri.
All right, starting out Friday morning, and we're already seeing some traffic is building up on Jogo Road this morning, trying to get into the CBD. Looks like nothing too terrible at the moment, and everybody's getting through without too much of an issue. We're also seeing a little bit of traffic coming out of Westlands as well. Muthui Road is jam-packed already. Langata Road seems to be behaving pretty well today. Not too much of an issue as we have seen through the week. Hopefully we're getting into the weekend with not too much of traffic on the roads this morning, and hopefully it will remain just so as we go through the day. All right, just in case it does pick up, you can get in touch on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127. It's Friday. Let's keep things moving into the weekend.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Good morning. A few minutes after 6 o'clock. It is 6:06. Good morning, Siti Muga.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm actually very well, thank you.
Yes?
Yes.
Things in CT land are good?
Yes.
Say yes one more time for good measure.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, good morning. It's Ndu and CT in the room with you this morning. Eric is away for today, just today, and he will be back, not to worry.
After today.
It's the last day of the week, the second Friday, as it were, and we're getting into the weekend with quite a number of things on the plate today. A lot of issues to look through today. Karibuni sana and welcome to the Situation Room. As we go into these conversations today, may God go with us, because quite a number of things happening from what many are calling a rogue deputy vice president, a rogue deputy president. Now things seem to be more than flashing out of the pan. And we'll be talking about that today, and also looking at, where are we in a country whereby young people can be killed at whim, what is now being called murder of young people, and nobody is answering these questions. And the outrage, questions are being asked. Where is the outrage? Why are we not more upset about when we see things like this? So we'll be looking at those conversations today. And a bunch of other things. And as we normally do, asking you to join in with us and, speak your mind, open up and join us in these conversations. And we'll get into a lot of those details this morning. But before we do, let's look at what's happening with COVID. Still striking back. COVID continues to strike back, going close to 2 years after it made its debut on the world scene. And if we just look at the numbers that we are experiencing around the world, starting with Kenya, the numbers continue to rise. 1,571 new cases of COVID in the country, 32 new deaths having been reported, and still continuing to look at issues of, lack of the resources needed to treat people, specifically oxygen, lack of space in terms of bed capacity at a number of hospitals around the country, and more people getting sick. The Delta variant seems to be doing the rounds around the world, and Kenya is not left out when it comes to this. If we look at global numbers, for example, we are still looking quite high at 201 million now. 697,453 new cases, total cases around the world. And it doesn't look like a pretty picture that's being painted. Some vaccines will land in the country today. Still, the call is to get as many people vaccinated as possible and say, look, it is the strongest or the most potent form of defense right now against COVID-19. And urging and encouraging as many people to go and get vaccinated. At the same time, still keep safe. We still hear from the Ministry of Health, the CS saying, you know what, guys, try as much as possible to take care of yourself when it comes to protection. But COVID still here, front and center, in the middle of the fourth wave. Yesterday, we saw a school having been shut down because 33 pupils having been tested positive for COVID. And whereas we thought didn't affect children as much as in a primary school, no less. And it's affecting more and more people in the country.
But even more significantly, there was a discussion that was had in the early days of COVID about the continuous testing of teachers. Yes, we know about the vaccination of teachers, but the truth of the matter is, even when you've been vaccinated, you can still get infected.
True.
So what I haven't heard enough of is a testing program that is continuous within schools. Because if you are going to open schools, what happens is children go to schools. Those who have young children know that every time a new term begins, children come back home with some of the most severe flus you can ever come across.
Yes.
They seem to do well with it, but the parents really suffer the result of it. Now, the microorganism that causes the flu is a virus.
It is.
Okay. Now, in the same way, you open up schools and children intermingle. They may be fine, but then they go back home. So we have a situation where we've actually reopened up a new avenue for infections. Now, we understood this, and that's why schools were shut down. but the precautionary measures that are actually required don't seem to be taken into account, or if they aren't being spoken of adequately.
Did we forget about what needed to be done when it comes to protection in schools? It would appear that the rest of the country just, kind of went along. Then schools reopened, and then we forgot that, certain protocol needed to be observed. Remember when schools were starting and we said, absolutely not. This cannot happen. Schools are going to open. There's not enough water. There are not enough water spaces for children to come and wash hands. There are parents who can't afford masks, etc. It was the subject of quite a lot of discourse at that point. But then schools opened, went on holiday, reopened, and, it's kind of like we just went back into the swing of things and didn't really take note that they could be one of the centers of super spread. And kind of forgot about it, it seems. We see children wearing masks, but then what is happening when it comes to their care?
One of the things that perhaps plagues us, among other things, is this notion that when you begin on a good footing, there must be continuity. The issue of the preventative aspects of healthcare with regard to COVID, we started off really genuinely well. And there was need for that continuity and the continuous following up. Because it isn't as though what we started would now put an end to COVID. COVID has simply done what a living organism does. It goes, it rejuvenates, it has a seminar, it has a conference, comes back, renewed, strengthened. And so it isn't the same virus. And this we know. And when it comes back, it's far deadlier than it was originally.
This is true.
Yes. So even as we talk about schools reopening and we talk about children in schools, the discussion around the safety measures shouldn't be a discussion. It should be a reality that schools talk about in terms of the levels of safety that they have put in place and the successes that are being met as a result of it. If not, what we're going to be hearing? It's not just people being infected, teachers being infected. We will be hearing of deaths occurring. Yes.
It is what is going to happen. It is what's going to happen. We're coming around to 14 minutes after 6 o'clock, actually. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It is a situation room. Come back, take a look at the weather, what's going on, and then we'll start to look at what is going on in the papers, in the news today. Are you tuned in? Our live stream is up on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and we welcome you into the Situation Room this morning. We'll be saying hello to you in a short while after we look at the traffic. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
Mama Vera, you look so relaxed. How do you manage to get your children to school in this city? There's too much chaos on the roads, and I'm always late for work after taking Kevin to school. It's a daily logistical nightmare.
Hey, Mama Kevin. Have you not heard of Maramoja Transport? They pick my children from home to school and bring them back in the evening. Vera does not have to wake up too early in the morning and after school. She gets home very energetic and has enough time to do her homework. Even her grades have improved.
Thank you, Mama Vera. Hapo umenichanua. This back to school, I will enroll Kevin on Maramoja Transport.
Maramoja Transport is a community-powered mobility platform with 6 years experience serving top corporates in Kenya. Maramoja's school transport solution is ideal for parents and school administrators alike, guaranteeing you peace of mind, accessibility, and safety for your children. Register today by visiting our website on www.school.maramoja.co.ke or email us on maramoja.maramoja.co.ke. Save more, stay safe, and no stress. Get more with Maramoja.
Chilled Spice.
All right, 14 degrees and clear in Nairobi this morning. It go to highs of 23. We'll see highs of 21 in Nyeri. It's cloudy at 13. It's also mostly clear in Nakuru at 13. Highs of 24. 23 will be the high in Eldoret. It's currently clear at 12. We're looking at 17 degrees and clear in Kisumu. Highs of 29. 28 will be the high in Kakamega. It's clear at 16. And 22 with light rain in Mombasa. Highs of 28. 28 will be the high in Malindi, where it's mostly clear currently at 24. We're looking at clear conditions in Kampala at 20. Highs of 26 and lows of 19. Also clear conditions in Dar es Salaam at 20. It'll go to highs of 29 today. 12 degrees and clear in Johannesburg. Highs of 23 and lows of 10. Mostly clear conditions this morning in Lagos at 24. It'll go to highs of 30. 29 will be the high in Kinshasa, where it's clear at 22. Sunny conditions at 30 in Beijing. Highs of 32 and lows of 21. Paris is cloudy this morning at 18, highs of 24. It's partly cloudy in London at 16 with highs of 22. It'll come down to lows of 14. And getting into early morning New York in a short while, it's 23. We'll see highs of 26 and lows of 19.
There are so many people peddling what is false and that it bears remarkable resemblance to what is true.
Politicians have their agenda, and their agenda is to use every opportunity to sell that agenda and to loot this nation.
I have seen major strides that are done in this country when we talk to each other as against talking at each other.
We start getting back into the tribal cocoons which were put to us by the colonial powers. You know, they gave us physical freedom but not mental freedom. We're still mentally colonized today into these cocoons of tribe.
Now, if you live in an area where it's difficult to find a dog,
he's a goat. I kid you not.
In which part of this country is it difficult to find a dog? So that you resort. Nafande hii umbo yako iko na pembe.
Hii ni umba special.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It is the only way to start your day. 18 minutes after 6 o'clock. If you're just tuning in, this is Kenya's biggest conversation. It is the Situation Room. Njoko and CT Muga in the room with you this morning. So the live stream is up on SpiceFM KE, wherever you tuned in from across the country, on the frequencies around Kenya, but as well online. So let's say hello to you this morning. Whoever is tuned in, Naomi Mwanza is tuned in from Zambia. Good morning. Otieno Odero Jr. says hello from the Great Wall of Kino. Kim Boy, good morning. Tuned in from Malindi. Yes, you are. Watching from Narok, Transmara West. That's where Talentino Victor is. B. Lwenga is tuned in this morning from South Africa. And David Hypeman, number 1 from Zibukia, is tuned in this morning. Benson Momo is tuned in as well. And Jack Maya is watching this morning from Namibia. Martin Kamau tuned in from Nyahururu, and Yasmin is tuned in as well. Zandile Hanyile is tuned in from South Africa, as is Agege Peter from Nairobi this morning. Everybody online today. Sally Daniels says, you know, the Delta wave is quite worrying. It really, really is worrying in terms of infection and more people being affected by it as well. Beta Ashley tuned in from Machakos. Good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining us in the room this morning. Conversations are going to involve you today, so you know we're very glad that you're here and listening in. All right, as we get into conversations this morning, CT, today's proverb, Medali ya siku. See, I'm letting this thing.
Right. What has horns must not be hidden in a sack.
What has horns? Pembe.
Must not be hidden in a sack.
Okay.
It's difficult to keep it hidden.
It is quite through the mesh, don't you think? Okay. I'm thinking this will open up for us as we go along.
I'm sure it will.
Of course, I want to ask the proverbial question of the proverb. Is an African proverb from Africa?
No. This is a Zulu proverb.
Every time when somebody wants to now put you in a box is when you now flip.
Well, It's African proverbs. If it isn't an African proverb, but it's akin to the proverbs that we associate with a lovely continent,
yep,
then I will mention it.
Super. Okay, so looking at what's going on in the news, quite a number of things. Deputy President William Ruto splashed across major papers today, and he says on the front page of the Standard, "I will leave Jubilee when I want," charting a new course. And the quote is, "We are not guests in any place. We join parties by choice and leave by choice. Nobody should ask why we are still here." Well, maybe you'd argue with that, but okay. Pushed to the periphery of a government, he co-ran with his boss. The DP hosted over 100 MPs for talks in Karen and declared that they will formally quit government at a time of their own choosing. So all this business that people are telling him, look, if you're not working with government, then you might as well step away. He says, well, thank you very much. I will leave when I am ready. And at the moment, I am not ready, essentially what he was saying. So at a political event staged at his official residence, the DP led 100 plus lawmakers in admonishing the Jubilee government failures of the last 4 years, blaming it all on former NASA coalition's partners and their collaborators in Jubilee. Donning all shades of yellow, the presumed color code of his new political vehicle, UDA, the DP camp formally announced that they have found a new home, but they won't quit just yet. They danced to their own new song. Many would argue that they've been dancing to a new tune for a while. They flew UDA flags over the official residence and announced that Jubilee, their former home, had collapsed. According to Ruto, we are not guests in any place. We join parties by choice and leave by choice. Nobody should ask why we are still here. When asked why he was still in government, he believes has failed to deliver on its pre-election pledges. And that's what he said. The team claimed that Uhuru's camp, in collaboration with NASA principals, took the Jubilee administration hostage and hijacked its agenda, leading to its present failures. And in a hard-hitting statement issued after the meeting, the group accused government of criminalizing small businesses in Nyamakima, Gikomba, Kamkunji and Kirinyaga Road, rendering several traders hapless with no source of income. And all of these things are the faults of the Jubilee government.
What I find interesting is that this was a conglomeration of legislators, and I would have assumed that one of the things that legislators do beyond legislating is representing these very same people whom they say have been marginalized, have been downtrodden, and it's a role that they still have.
Yep.
You are not an acting legislator, you are a legislator, okay? By the same token, you are not an acting deputy president, you are a deputy president. And what gives credence to this, not lends, gives, is the fact that this meeting took place at the official residence of the deputy president of the country.
Yes.
So, if I was looking for a statement that would perhaps give appropriate meaning to the word falsehood, it is this.
Well, I think that there are many that can be many falsehoods that can be brought out of this. Okay, as you say, the official residence. You are making this claim about government from the residence that government has bequeathed to you to run government business.
Yes, and then there are all these people who are representatives of the people of this country talking about the failure of government and not seeing that they're talking about their own failures. If everything that they keep talking about as being a failure of government, and yet it is them who are entrusted by their people to ensure that they either bring the government to book, they question, they ensure that things are done as they ought to, and they're the same ones speaking, then what they're telling us is, please observe, here we are incriminating ourselves and telling the whole country how we have failed in our duties.
Because it is all of us together.
That is precisely what they're telling us, that we have all failed in our duties.
We're going to talk about this in a short while and in more detail, but this sets a good precedent for that conversation, I think, because I think Kenyans are being fed. There is this menu of falsehoods which Kenyans are being asked to gobble up, and until eyes are open, until the proverbial scale falls from eyes, we're going to have this muddled about existence where you're not really sure who is saying what. You're walking around in a bit of a haze. Okay, Other headlines today.
You know, before you leave,
Yeah.
there's something that I think is unfortunate. If I am to believe that what you read as being quoted, the quote as being from the deputy president, that people should not ask. Unfortunately, once you are in the public domain,
People have to ask.
everything that you do will be questioned, and everything that you say will be questioned. That is part and parcel of what it takes to be in the public domain.
Yes.
And more so, what it takes when you're still the deputy president.
People are going to ask.
You will be asked.
Yes. And if you've said, look, you said you're not happy with it. So people are asking, okay, so go then. You can't say that you will not tell people when you're going to go until you're ready. Belligerent juvenile behavior. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the Olympics before we look at other news. We saw a really good race in the 1500 meters yesterday, right? It was a good one whereby Kip Sang has broken the 1500 Olympics record in the semis. The youngster obliterated the mark set by Kenyan legend Noah Ngenyi 21 years ago, and he was able to do this in a semi-final. And by all indications, the final will be quite hot. It took 20 years for Noah Ngenyi to dismember Seb Coe's Olympic 1500 meters record of 3 minutes, 32.53 seconds at the Moscow Games in 1980. And it has taken 21 years for Abel Kipsang to obliterate Ngenyi's mark that stood since the 2000 Sydney Olympics. On a competitive night of semi-final action at the Tokyo National Stadium, Kipsang last night set an Olympic record in the 1500, clocking 3 minutes, 31 seconds, 0.65. And this was only in the semi-final. Kipsang will join world champion Timothy Cheruiyot in tomorrow's final, which the latter predicts will be very fast. The third Kenyan, Charles Simotuo, failed to qualify, running at 3:34.61 in the first semi-final to finish sixth and miss out on both the 5 automatic slots from each semi-final and 2 slots reserved for the fastest losers. Ngenyi, currently based in Lanette, last night congratulated young Kipsang for taking away his 2-decade-old Olympic mark. It was a fantastic race to watch, and by all indications, the final will be fire.
Is it one of these races where you say the semi-finals was actually the final?
It was, yes. It really did look like that because, Olympic record broken, a new one set. And yeah, if that's what it was, then you can only hope for. If you don't get a fire final, you already then saw something with the semi-final last night. Yes, what you got, CT?
Well, what I'm looking at here is something that I think is a little cheerful. Business Daily. Ethiopia clears hurdle for M-Pesa expansion. Yes. M-Pesa wanted to M-Pesa their business of M-Pesaing in Ethiopia. And Ethiopia has cleared the way for Safaricom to introduce its popular M-Pesa in the market of 110 million people after deciding to include the mobile phone-based financial service in the telco's license offer in May. Okay? The Ethiopian authorities told the Business Daily yesterday that the Safaricom license will be upgraded to include mobile financial services when it completes bidding for its second telecoms operator permit.
Okay.
So, we have seen the banking sector in this country moving out of the country and getting into East Africa.
Yep.
And we now see the communication business doing precisely that.
Absolutely. Yes. Things are moving. What I do like is that, when you make a point of some kind of expansion and you're actually seeing it being followed up with action, and then hurdles are moved, things are moving a lot quicker. It's good for Ethiopia, but it's actually very good then for a Kenyan company as well to be able to move in that direction.
You see, for a country to accept this sort of business offer or a bid of this nature, they must have seen and understood the benefits that they will derive.
Absolutely.
Which means the people who packaged this deal were smart enough to have ensured that the country that they're taking the business to can see with great clarity how it is they stand to benefit.
Absolutely.
Then one doesn't begrudge you the benefit that you will derive.
You will get, exactly. Yes. It's 6:30 on the nose. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads and then come back and continue looking at what's happening in the papers.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
They are stealing every opportunity that you should have. They're stealing your health facilities. They're stealing all the progress that you planned for your child. They're stealing all the benefits that university students should have. Your livelihood is slowly being taken away from you, which means your life is also being slowly taken away from you as you watch.
Cut through the noise and stay in the know by texting the word TSR to 22840 to receive these and more highlights and insights from the Situation Room directly to your mobile phone. Don't miss out on the latest from Kenya's biggest conversation. SMS TSR to 22840.
Okay, so as everybody wakes up, it seems like traffic is building. Langata Road, where we thought it wasn't looking too bad, sorry, but it looks like it's all red all the way from the Bomas Junction out then towards the roundabout at T-Mall, some spilling over into Nairobi West, and so it looks like it's going to be that morning, guys. Jogoo Road is also building up, and all the way beyond Hamza through to the roundabout at the City Stadium and then onto Landis Road. Doesn't look too pretty right now. It looks like it's going to be a busy Friday. We're also seeing traffic on the Thika Superhighway coming into the city. It is not slowing down. It's actually picking up, but it is packed. Kiambu Road is bumper to bumper already at 6:30, and we're seeing that we'll soon get from 2 to 3 to possibly 4 lanes at this rate. Coming out of Westlands as well, everybody is going towards Muthui Road. That's the way to then join the Thika Superhighway and then get into the city, because that Museum Hill ramp is still closed weeks after. Hopefully it'll open up soon and then traffic can flow a lot better. That's what we're looking at in the city for now. Nothing too crazy. Remember that if you're really worried about getting into the thick of things with traffic, the southern, the eastern, the Red Hill, northern bypasses are looking pretty good this morning. Use them. Talk to us as well on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127. We want to keep things moving this morning.
You know, when you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to steal.
The guys who quote the Bible and say I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us to assert our will.
When the legislature are now being taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality. We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi la Wokovu is Jeshi la Wokovu?
I can't say it very well.
And everyone knows. Okay.
This is The Situation. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
From this morning around the country, 97.7 in Malindi, and in Kisumu, 102.5 Eldoret. Somebody's asking about that. 96.7 is where you're tuned into Spice FM this morning. It's Friday, and getting into conversations that affect our world in the Situation Room this morning with Ndru and CT. Eric is away for today, and the conversations continue. And we're having a look at news being reported around the country. Okay, so the IEBC needed some new commissioners. They went through this rigorous process of interviews over the last month, and there have been some names then nominated by His Excellency the President, and then those names then have been forwarded to Parliament for debate. So the President has nominated Julia Cherera, Francis Wanderi, Irene Cherop, and Justice Abonyo to be commissioners of the Electoral Agency, ending a 4-year stalemate. So for 4 years, there's been a gap. Names of the former nominees for appointment to the position of member of the Independent and Boundaries Commission have been sent to Parliament for vetting. They are among 36 Kenyans in a list teeming with former members of the independent commissions who were shortlisted from a list of 669 applicants. The four, if approved by Parliament, will be replacing Rosalind Akombe, Margaret Mwanchanya, Paul Kurgat, and former Vice Chair Consolata Minor, who resigned from the commission. If approved, Cherop will have a second chance to make her input to the redrawing of the constituency boundaries. She was a member of the Interim Independent Boundaries Review Commission of Kenya, led by Andrew Ligale, that drew up the current electoral boundaries. According to Justin Muthui, the committee should expeditiously notify the nominees and the public of the time and place for holding the approval hearings, and upon conclusion of the hearings, table its report in the House. So everybody's been waiting with bated breath for this thing to happen, eh? And here it is. Name's been given. Let's see it happen. What else? Okay. So this story of brothers who died allegedly at the hand of police is not going away. As some might think it would. Did the brothers jump out of a moving vehicle? Police claim they did so while under arrest, and that the officers who arrested them did not notice that they had jumped out of the vehicle. Meanwhile, the independent, or IPOA rather, has launched investigations into the mysterious deaths. How is it that they were arrested, number one, for flouting COVID rules, and they were outside the curfew hours, and then turn up dead? Their bodies found in a mortuary. The Independent Policing Oversight Authority yesterday announced that it had launched investigations into how Benson Jiro, 22, and his 19-year-old brother Emmanuel Mutura met their deaths. Jiro, who was a student at the Kabrak University, and Mutura were last seen on Sunday at 10 p.m. in Kianjokoma village in Embu, where it is said that they were arrested for being outside during the curfew. Their bodies then were found at the Embu General Hospital mortuary Tuesday. Their deaths caused massive riots in Kianjokoma village for the better part of Wednesday. A police vehicle was torched during running battles between officers from Manyata Police Post and angry residents of the village where the two men hailed from. On the spot are 5 officers who, it has been established, arrested the 2 young men. They claimed that the 2 jumped from a moving vehicle without them noticing. So you ask, if they did not notice, how then did they? No.
Secondly, if there are 5 officers, so are we saying all these 5 officers were in the vehicle? Are we saying that all these 5 officers were not in the back of the vehicle?
Of the vehicle.
How?
You can't speak out of 2 sides of your mouth, unfortunately, because if you did not notice that they jumped out, how then do you know without doubt that they jumped out? You don't know this,
and
right?
If they did jump out and they weren't the only people who had been arrested, because the news that we read yesterday indicated that there were a group of people, okay? Now, are you telling me that if somebody jumps out, that those at the back of the vehicle will simply keep quiet? Will they know they have jumped out? Will they know they have fallen out? There's a lot in this story that still doesn't seem to tie up or make sense.
They claimed that the 2 jumped from a moving police vehicle without them noticing.
We got that jumping
and died on the spot as they were being driven to the police station.
But that isn't quite the story that we read yesterday. Because they noticed they were not there when they got to the police station. They came and picked them up, and they died by the time they got to hospital.
Yes, they said that now at hospital they were declared dead
on
arrival.
So,
how did they then die on the spot?
Is this a reporting issue, or is it like with the story of Kangogo? There's a lot that is going to, because the other people who were in this particular vehicle haven't spoken.
No, they have not.
And one will need to hear what it is that they have to say.
The family, however, disagrees, saying that the bodies of the 2 brothers were found more than 30 kilometers from their home and nowhere near the Manyata police post, where it is said that they had been taken upon being arrested. Additionally, the family said that the bodies had no physical injuries. Wednesday, the residents of Kianjokoma lit tires at the market and engaged in running battles with the police for the better part of the day. And although calm has returned to the village, tensions are still high. No physical injuries. And
yesterday we said there were head injuries.
Yeah.
Now, if you fall from a moving vehicle, yes,
You will scratch something.
You can injure your head, yes, but your other limbs will also be injured. Because you don't sort of like fall on the spot and remain mobile. No, you move. There's something called momentum.
You keep going.
You keep going, yes. It doesn't matter how you fall, you'll keep going. If that vehicle is moving, you will also move with that same speed until you come to a halt.
But what is going on? You know, there's so many stories of young people whose lives are snuffed out in this manner. And to the point where saying, look, there should be calls for outrage. There should be that. It cannot be that because they're young people that maybe there's this notion that they don't have much to answer for in terms of what they've been able to achieve in life, that you can kind of get rid of them and then brush it under the carpet as if it didn't matter and expect that anybody who was hearing the story would just say, okay, yes, it was an accident. They were trying to get away from the arrest of police and they died in the process, and everybody is to be accepting of that.
You know, I'm a bit reluctant as these issues keep coming up and we hear of more cases to talk about the police. I am inclined to saying the police in this particular area named so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so were involved. Because if we keep saying the police, it's almost akin to saying that the police all over the country are committing these ills, and the truth is they are not.
We're going to talk about this later, CT, but isn't it that there are very many cases where the police in this particular case, whereby young people disappeared, or people disappeared, and nobody to date has given reason as to why or how they did.
That is absolutely true.
Yes, and now once you put them together, and somebody having a conversation about them says, look, you have one case where there was this, police involved. Another case, police involved. Another case, police involved. You put them together and you have the police.
You do, but it's still a fraction of the police force and the police service as it's spread throughout the country. Because there'll be different incidences where, again, as you say, the police are involved. I am saying there is need to call out the specific people who were involved in these issues. Why am I saying this? Teachers have been tarred with a similar brush in the past. More so, teachers who were reported to be amorous with their female students. Right? Underage girls. Girls who are below the age of 18, even if they're above the age of 18, but they were students. Now, the names of these teachers or these educators may be mentioned. But if you say teachers are, you see, you've then tarred the entire profession. What I'm saying is, it is true they belong to a particular cadre of individuals or professionals in the country. But the specific individuals are the ones I'm saying should also be brought to book.
Yeah.
The focus should be on this person and this person and this person and this person.
It should. The unfortunate thing, and again, like as we discuss this more, is that unfortunately, very rarely are names of particular officers brought out. Very rarely do you hear that it was John Doe from ex-police post that was responsible for this.
Let me explain to you why I'm saying this. There was a time I gave someone a lift. I had come from my rural home. There was somebody, as you turn off towards Kisumu, the place called Awasi. So there were these two individuals who wanted a lift. They stopped me and I gave them a lift. Now, we got to a certain spot and we were stopped. Okay? Now, when we were stopped, it isn't that we had done anything wrong. I was driving at the correct speed, but I happened to know the police officers because I was on that road very often. And we got talking. And one of the passengers that had given a lift got very upset. Said, this person stopped me the other day and then kept me. And I asked, okay. And the person said, but you were over speeding, madam. And we proved to you that you were over speeding. Yes. So what did you want us to do? You were over speeding.
You are
and
at fault.
We told you that you were over speeding. So this police officer tells me, you know, this person who seems to be known to you was rude to us on that day and they're being rude now. I said, look, that's a discussion for a different day. Now, after we drove off, I asked, why were you upset? He said, I was rushing to get something done and they delayed me. I said, but were you over speeding? He said, but I was in a hurry. Now,
which one is it?
They were clearly over speeding. These stories must be filtered and the truth behind them. because we already have determined that the police force in this country are bad people. And if we haven't determined, we are heading in that direction of determining that these are despicable individuals whom we cannot relate to. So the moment you hear police, only bad vibes can be related to. And I'm saying, no. Let's pause a while. Yes, they are bad apples. Let's be specific about the specific problems that we have.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a short while. It's 14 minutes to 6 o'clock. I mean, the numbers are crazy. One is too much, in my opinion, for somebody to go missing, and that nobody's giving an answer to that. Where else do numbers matter? NCBA Bank is saying that the numbers that matter to you also matter to them. It's not just about giving you a loan to take care of your mortgage or giving you a loan to boost your business, but actually making sure that the numbers that are mattering to you, the days that you can spend with your children, the number of trips that you can take because your business is resting, the number of hours that you can spend with your loved ones because you don't have to worry about other numbers when it comes to finance. NCBA wants to make sure that they're taking care of those numbers for you. And, you can get in touch with NCBA today and find out how you can make sure that your numbers are taken care of, so the numbers that matter are actually considered. NCBA Bank, go for it.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
At NCBA, we know it's more than a house loan. It's the many memories with your loved ones. Call 0711 056 444 or visit ncbagroup.com for more information on property finance. At NCBA Bank, the numbers that matter to you matter to us.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Forgiveness is always conditional. Even before God, there's nothing like unconditional forgiveness.
Government doesn't pay you pension until you retire. In fact, they have no money for you. The day you retire, they look for it.
This country is punishing many young people. These young people are more susceptible to be deceived, to be taken advantage of, and they're more susceptible to be bought off.
Let us also talk about where we want our country to go. We are a population of very young people.
We're in a state of capture. The judiciary is under duress. Parliament is in the pocket of the executive. You don't sit and wait for the regime to topple itself. It will never do so.
By the way, let me tell you, these guys are so persuasive. I'm telling you, they can persuade you to sell your grandmother. I'm telling you, they can sell sand in the desert.
Ceci, has anybody on this program said to you as a guest, say, "Oh, shut up, we don't want to be told what to do"? Has anybody that kind of... Has anybody been
I will not listen.
bit of advice? Because you're working on the premise that we should all pay heed to these proverbs. It's a very suspect notion.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
Joining us in the Situation Room this morning. Thank you for all of us who are in the room this morning, Ndruko and C.T. Muga, as we're looking at what's going on. So leading off of some of these stories, we'll be discussing those in some detail later, because they are actually some sticking points for very many people, and the outrage that we see today is not a joke.
There's a story that has caught my attention. It's in the Star on page 11. This is a sort of story that turns heads. There was a study that was conducted by the Kenya Medical Research Institute and the U.S. Army Medical Research Directorate, Africa, Walter Reed. And the title of this particular findings, which was then published in the Environmental Research and Public Health Journal, is 10,000-fold higher than acceptable bacterial loads detected in Kenyan hospital environment. What they're saying is this. Hospitals are supposed to be a safe haven. You are unwell, you go to hospital, you are more or less guaranteed that you will get better. They were saying, but however, being in hospital actually presents you with more dangers than the ones that actually took you there in the first place. A survey, yes, in several level 4, 5, and 6 hospitals in Kenya have found that they are teeming with bacteria. It doesn't stop there. 10,000 times more than the acceptable level.
What?
Yes. 10,000 times more.
So the place that you go to heal essentially could be the one that gets you sicker.
Yes. And let me tell you where they found some of these.
Do we want to know?
Yes, you do.
Gosh.
Mobile phones that are held by clinicians, stethoscopes, blood pressure cuffs, thermometers. All these are teeming with germs. All right. Let me just continue the list so that you understand. All right. Patient beds, bed rails, baby cots, intravenous pulse steering handles, newborn incubators, intravenous tubing, tray laptops, baby weighing scales, bedside laptops, room lights, switches, and room inner doorknobs.
Hold on. So essentially, you could go for, you know what this. I'm not even going to. You're not even finished, CT. But what it means is that you could go in with something, and that you could be in hospital for a short period of time, get infected with something, and then get sicker than you actually were when you went into hospital.
Yes, this is research now giving credence to claims that we've heard in the past that people have gone to hospital one thing, they end up dying, and the question is, but what took this person to hospital was not even life-threatening.
Yes.
They were not even they could have ignored going. Poor sanitation. Yes, they don't sanitize adequately.
Why? You know, it's just so far removed because this is the expectation or the assumption that in hospital everything is sterile, that they're extremely serious about making sure that all your tops are clean and sanitized and things like that, that you would expect that it was clean and that the hospital is not the war zone. But it turns out that
I wish it was simple because they actually do this. Twice a day, many of these surfaces are cleaned by what we call bleach.
Yeah, yes.
Now, sodium hypochlorite is what it's called. Okay, but it appears even once they are cleaned, they are immediately reinfected.
So you're saying that you have to be constantly cleaning.
It can't be twice.
It can't be twice a day. You're going to have to be cleaning constantly to keep the germs at bay in hospital.
Yes. It can't be twice a day. Now, this is good information, and it's something that people should actually understand. Now, we are not talking COVID, remember?
No,
we're just talking about a regular hospital where you go for health care.
Yeah.
And we are saying that the likelihood of you acquiring something you didn't go there with is extremely high. That's all.
But it's not just all CT. I mean, it's pretty freaky when you're thinking about it. Like, you could go and come out with some fungus and that cannot be treated easily or something. And you went in for something. You went in for surgery. You come out with a bacterial infection that's life-threatening.
Well, I left two just so that I could pepper you.
I don't even want to know.
All right, okay. Clinicians' gowns.
Oh, come off it.
And medical instruments.
Come. There's everything.
It boils down to that.
I think it's worth. I think everybody needs to sit up and take notice, because the place where you've gone to get good health care, the place where you've gone to be treated, essentially is the infection zone.
Yes, there's an article by a gentleman called John Muchangi. Yes, now he is trained in reporting such matters. So he's somebody who actually understands what he's talking about. And he presents it. He understands research findings. Yes, and he understands how it should be reported.
It should be reported.
Yes.
Okay. So yesterday, university lecturers were up in arms, right? They were talking about, give us our money, etc. So they're now demanding the release of their full salaries. They're saying that only 7 institutions out of 35 have placed academic staff in the correct basic salary scale. And they are accusing the universities of paying them way below what was negotiated in their collective bargaining agreement. Academic staff at public universities have demanded their full salary as ordered by court. Remember, a few months ago, that's what had happened. Court said, pay these people their money. All right. Universities go back to doing the same thing. Now, varsity lecturers are saying, come on, guys, apart from us having a CBA, the court has actually gone ahead and said you folks ought to pay us, and that is not happening. They've accumulated huge salary arrears, according to WASU, which represents workers ranging from graduate assistants to professors. The gross arrears for a professor at Egerton University, for example, amounts to 615,000 shillings, University of Nairobi at 307,000, Tom Mboya at 215,000, and Masai Mara at 481,000. In a letter to the University Education and Research Principal Secretary Simon Nabukwesi, WASU Secretary General Constantine Wasonga said the implementation of the 2017-2021 collective bargaining agreement was chaotic and causing distress among lecturers. He said 28 out of the 35 public universities continue to pay academic staff a basic salary below the scales agreed in the CBA. Universities such as UON, Kenyatta, Jomo Kenyatta and Technical University of Kenya are underpaying their academic staff. And they're saying, look here, pay us our money or we will not come to work.
Well, talking about payment, the Central Bank of Kenya has said this: failure by the national and county governments to pay or to settle pending bills has weakened the economy. Just before COVID-19 set in, the economy was really weak, but causing the recession that we speak of in the country. There's an article on page 12 again in the Star, and the title is Yatani puts ministries, counties on notice over huge pending bills. Oh, no. This story is interesting. Because according to the CS Treasury, they're saying we have given you what, as of June 30th, whatever was owed to us, by us, to you, we've given you.
Did they?
We've paid it. Why are there still pending bills?
Oh, really?
Yes.
It's not a mystery, man.
No. They're asking the question. And they're even saying, we are going to take punitive action against this. Because the story that they didn't have money, that story doesn't, unless somebody's going to come up and tell us that the CS is not telling us the truth and that they haven't received all their money.
Hold on a minute. Are we saying unequivocally that all money received by June 30th took care of all money owed by June 30th?
Yep.
Every single cent that was owed by the 30th of June, plus that which had not been paid before, has been settled.
Let me read it for you so that it isn't me telling a story, okay? The National Treasury has put state agencies and county governments on notice over pending bills, saying it gave out 100% allocation for the year ended June 30th. Interpret that.
So, it means that they've received all their money now. So what's the problem? Is it true?
If we can confirm that what is being presented here, what is being reported here is true, then we could argue that, by the way, the county government itself has issues with pending bills, just so that you understand.
Yes.
The national government has issues with pending bills.
Yes.
So, let's leave the national government aside, because they're the ones who have the money. County governments have told us time and time again that they were unable to settle these bills because they didn't have the money. We are now being told that they have been given money.
So everybody has money. They need to now sort themselves out in terms of what has been pending over the last 6 months or so. We're getting around to 7 o'clock in Kenya's biggest conversation. It is the Situation Room. We're going to open it up in a short while and ask you to join the conversation. We're looking at a deputy president in the next hour, and it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say. Now it is 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. The ball is now on Parliament's court to expedite the interview process of the 4 names submitted to it by President Uhuru Kenyatta for individuals shortlisted to fill the 4 vacant seats at IEBC. National Assembly Speaker Justin Muthui is expected to inform the House of the communication from the President and forward the same to the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee chaired by Kangema MP Muturi Kigano. Juliana Chirera, Francis Wanderi, Irene Masit and Justice Abonyo Nyangaya have been shortlisted by the President. The 4 have been chosen among 36 Kenyans that are shortlisted to fill the 4 vacant positions at IEBC. The merger between Jubilee and ODM has been blamed for the troubles in Jubilee party. In the UDA parliamentary group meeting at Deputy President William Ruto's residence in Karen, the members discussed strategies that will see the party strengthen its base at the grassroots levels as we approach the 2022 general elections. Kandara MP Alice Wahome blamed ODM leaders for contributing to the complete disabling of Jubilee projects following an agreement between Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta.
A merger of the governing party and the opposition coalition was occasioned by the hardship that was presented ostensibly as a framework for peace and economic growth. Kenyans initially welcomed this development and hoped that the promise of a peaceful environment would facilitate the implementation of the Big Four agenda and enable the Jubilee administration to continue with its development plan. That was never to be.
Many questions continue to surround Deputy President William Ruto's visit to Uganda that was aborted earlier this week. This comes as Uganda's NRM party, led by Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, slammed ODM lawmakers who said Ruto was planning to use Museveni's NRM policies to force himself into the next general election. The Director General of Communication at NRM, Emmanuel Dombo, has said it is sad to see ODM leaders making statements that threaten the good relationship between the two countries.
But it is the revelation that Ruto seeks to use the tactics of Uganda's National Resistance Movement, NRM, to capture power here in Kenya that should make all Kenyans very afraid.
That don't concern us at all. We have had Right Honorable Raila Odinga in the past. We have had His Excellency Ruto in the past. And we know that this is the fraternal relationship that is based on the values of East Africa.
Kenya's Asbel Kipsang smashed the Olympic record in the men's 1500 meters when he ran 3 minutes 31.65 to secure victory in the second semi-final at the Tokyo Olympics yesterday. He beat the 21-year-old record of 3 minutes 32.07 seconds set by countryman Noah Ngeny at the 2000 Games in Sydney, Australia. He will team up with world champion Timothy Cheruiyot, who secured an automatic qualification in the finals when he finished third in the same heat. In the first heat, this is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto.
SpiceFM, Nakuru.
It's building up quite some around Nairobi. We're seeing bumper-to-bumper traffic along Langata Road as you're trying to get into the city. We're also seeing it quite heavy on Jogger Road this morning, headed out towards Landys Road. Landys Road then into the CBD looked heavy at the Kamkunji roundabout. It's going to take some time to get out of this one, and that's what it looks like right now. Also on the Thika Superhighway, joining with Kiambu Road, as you then connect to the Pangani underpass, quite some traffic there this morning. Coming out of Westlands as well is also heavy. Don't forget, the Red Hill Link Road is going to help out here. As you get onto Waiyaki Way, just go across. Spending your time getting into that mess that's there along Waiyaki Way might not be the best idea. Traffic in other parts doesn't look too bad. Looking out west, going out past Naivasha, going out past Nakuru this morning doesn't look too bad. It looks like it's going to move well. It's getting busy around Outer Ring, Manyanja Road interchange as well. And we saw that early morning fire at Gikomba, and that traffic is holding it down there right now as well. Let's keep talking. Let us know where you might get stuck this morning. SpiceFMKE is how you can get in touch on Twitter. Text on 40127. It's Friday. Let's keep things moving well into the weekend.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room the only way to start your day.
At 5 minutes past 7 o'clock, how are you this Friday? This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Getting into the thick of things today. Nduoko and CT Muga with you in the studio today. Eric Latif is away for today. And as we are talking and getting into some of the things that affect us deeply in this country, we're in official political silly season right now. But as we get into that conversation this morning, let's start off today with the proverb, CT.
What has horns must not be hidden in a sack.
It almost sounds like a riddle. What has horns and 3 legs? Okay, sorry.
And barks at night.
What has horns and 3 legs and barks at night?
Yes.
Whatever it is, run away. What has horns?
What has horns must not be hidden in a sack. Meaning, if you want to go into the business of hiding things, please choose everything else, but don't choose anything that has horns. It'll give you away.
It will give you away. Or poke through your covering.
Yes.
It will. Okay, so where you tuned in around the country, Nairobi 97.4, and then other parts of the country as well. Our live streams are up on SpiceFM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We're having this conversation this morning, and one that seems to have grabbed the country by the horns. Really, the deputy president having come out yesterday and said a number of things. Basically, look, this is my ring. I'm playing in it. The people that I have asked to join me, it is us now who will say what we are doing and when we're doing it. We are the ones who will basically dictate the terms within which we will play in, which is what he said yesterday at the official residence in Karen. And some of the things that he did say, not lending anymore, CT, but giving credence to the fact that this gentleman has decided that he's going to operate in a certain manner and that nobody should ask him questions. How dangerous is it a stance to take for somebody who was elected together with the president to take a stance that is totally different from that of the presidency and going ahead to make certain utterances that, in my opinion, are not safe politically for the country? And when we talk about safe, I'm not talking about safe that people running into the street and burning things. I'm talking about safe and then how you safeguard the minds of Kenyans over whom you're going to govern. Because if you can show that there's a split and that you're going to run off and do whatever it is that you want, let's say that Kenyans give you the opportunity then to be president, then what would you do? And I keep saying that a track record is what gives people indications of how you will operate in the future. The way you're behaving today is giving people an insight into how you would behave should you be given that position.
You know what I find interesting is this. Well, let me start with the point that you've made regarding a presidency. Yes, the track record is definitely a clear indicator of what somebody can do because it's the history of what you've done. There's no arguing with that. We can see. So if we extrapolate from that, one can then say with a certain degree of certainty that you can more or less figure out what is likely to happen next. Yes. But with a position such as the presidency, sometimes it is impossible to figure out what somebody will actually do in detail. Why I say in detail is because from what I have observed, the moving parts, once that one confronts or one is presented once they're in that position, nothing in their history, nothing in anything that they had done before could have prepared them for it. Nothing. Whether you've been vice president or a deputy president, nothing actually prepares you for certain things once you get to that seat of the presidency. Because suddenly, there's no deferring everything anywhere. It stops with you. And when I talk about moving parts, I'm talking about the moving parts as in the various interests that helped you get to that position. These are people who support you. Then the moving parts of individuals who did not see eye to eye with you and still don't see eye to eye and make it very clear that they don't see eye to eye. But what makes our situation unique is that the very people who saw eye to eye and were part and parcel of the same government, one president, the other one the deputy.
Yes.
Suddenly, what seems to have been in the public eye for the longest time is a deputy who has taken over the role of the opposition. There's a toing and froing, a back and forth. No, we're still in government. Yes, yes. All the trappings of government, the vehicle, the housing, the position, the title, the office. Yes, but there's also a detail. Very many of the duties that had been assigned to that particular office no longer exist.
Yes.
Now, the question that one asks is this. How then do you read, how do you interpret a situation where somebody is a deputy president of a country, and yet with every moving part that I've referred to, including duties that were previously assigned to them having been allocated elsewhere, but someone still residing in a government building, someone still holding the office, having the perks of that particular office, being paid by the citizens to have that particular office. How do you interpret such a person fronting a different party other than the party that has afforded him everything there? How do you interpret this?
It flies in the face, for me, it flies in the face of any kind of loyalty whatsoever. You know what? According to Article 147, it is very, very clear. And I'm just going to stick on the facts today. All this sensationalism and victimization and playing that we are getting the short end of the stick, that or the other thing. According to Article 147 of the Constitution, it says, the deputy president shall be the principal assistant of the president and shall deputize for the president in the execution of the president's functions. To deputize. Full stop. You are to basically follow in the shadow and do what the president would do. In his or her absence, you behave in a manner that the president would. Or if we want to stick to the facts, all this other circus and menagerie that we are dealing with here, in my opinion, doesn't matter. So this thing of them saying, I will resign when I want to resign, I will do what I want to do when I want to do. Actually, no. According to the supreme law of the land, your job as a deputy president is to deputize the president. Because the assumption is that when you came to the people on this ticket and said, this is what we want to do, and we are doing it together, the assumption was that for the length of time that you would be in the presidency, because it's a two-part thing here, that both of you make up the presidency, and with all the other trappings that come along with it, that for the length of time that you would be in the presidency, that you would deputize the president, that this ticket that you came together as one upon, that you would fulfill it. So for me, it is very clear. As you have gotten to the point whereby the common ticket upon which you stood asking Kenyans to give you this, you no longer are part of it, you should step down. You should step down, because what are you doing? You are bringing a fox now into the hen house. The hen house being the presidency here, you have brought a foreign member into the presidency, which is what you should not be doing, so you should not be there. And why is it so difficult to say, okay, clearly my interests have changed, let me go and pursue those interests? Why hold on to power? For me, it's an indicator of what possibly could happen in the future. Why hold on to it with such tenacity? Why? There's something wrong here. There's something wrong. And if anything, it is an indicator of what could happen in the future.
And when you say something is wrong, this it that you feel is wrong, what would you say it is? What it is this it?
Because if you're showing people today that in something that you clearly have no interest, this presidency and the way in which it is working, the political party, which is supposed to be now the majority party here in government, that your interests are different, that you're not towing the line anymore. It's showing me, and I think it's clear as day, that should you be given an opportunity also to be in a position of power, that you're going to do things as you wish, that you will abandon things that you promised people that you would do, you abandoned ideas that you sold the people on, and that you would essentially do what you want, and then you would reserve the right to act like a petulant child when things don't go your way.
And you are suggesting thereby that when you are asked to account, you will be told that your response will be, you should not be asked such things.
Of course, you then say, don't ask me. I will do when I want. How?
You know, this picture is not complete if we do not point to a simple fact. Talking about fact, fact is, how then do you function when you start a coalition? Remember, this particular coalition was a 50-50 coalition. That was the understanding between the two. Everything they said, 50-50. Okay? 50 yako, 50 yangu.
Yes.
In terms of an election period or 10 years of your rule, 10
of
years
mine.
of my rule. Yes. But alongside that came duties and functions. Now, this duty is actually allocated by the president. The president has the powers to say, you do this, you do the other, you do the other. Now, the moment you are stripped of those duties, it also points to something, a weakening of your position. Politically speaking, it is. Now, were we given reasons why those particular positions or those particular duties were removed? There was, as is always the case, a lot of this and the other, but nothing specific. Now, again, are we in a position to question? Yes, we are. We should ask, what really were the reasons? Because if the reasons are insufficient, or if the grounds that we are being presented to us seem frivolous, then I can understand why it is. Then the deputy president figured, you know something, I'm being toyed with here. So I might as well look for something else to do. Because this particular thing that I thought was rooting for me is clearly not working for me. So let me figure out what I can do for myself.
Okay, and now that you have clearly figured it out, because it is clear that this has been figured out, while on at your official residence, having been given to you by the government of the day, paid for by Kenyans.
Actually, by the people.
By the people.
By the people.
Paid for by Kenyans, you're still making a decision of how you're not going to be part of the presidency, that you will essentially not deputize, that essentially you will not do your job, right? You will not do, is what you've basically said. You will not do your job. Why still hang on to the reins of power? Why not say, you know what? This is not working out for me anymore. Let me leave. Why not do that? I think it's a dangerous place to throw the minds of Kenyans into. And I say, look, it's not working for you anymore. Just break it off and then go and pursue these interests that you are bringing onto, again, the official residence, whereby you've been given powers to do government business. But now you're bringing your own personal interests there.
You know,
move.
You know, we're talking facts. Where does it say, in which constitution is this enshrined, that if you have a differing opinion, because I could easily argue that this is just a difference of opinion, and I'm expressing the difference of opinion because I haven't joined the party. I've merely supported a party.
Choose a side.
Actually, this is precisely it. I've chosen a side. I will be
on the fence.
In the middle. Yes.
This is not a side, CT. It's the fence. It's the fence. You're sitting on the fence.
And you say the fence is not a side.
So how do we take you seriously if you can't decide? How do we take you seriously as somebody who wants to essentially lead the country when you can't decide? Oh, I'm going to have a foot here and I'm going to have a foot here and see what suits me best. And then you're trailing along an entire population who, for some reason, are able to believe in the things that you're saying. But you still cannot make a decision. You can't make a decision about where you stand as an individual. How are you going to decide for the lives and livelihoods of Kenyans who would essentially be depending on you should they give you the position of president of this country? You're showing them basically that you can't decide. You can't decide. Look, Jubilee is not serving its purpose for you anymore. What you wanted to do politically, it will not allow you to do. Leave it alone. You've decided that you want to go to UDA and you want to do this, that, the other thing. You've decided that you will not deputize, which is what the supreme law of the land is demanding of you as a deputy president. You've decided that you can't do this anymore. To me, it is very simple. Leave. Pursue these other interests. If anything, grab this particular bull by the horns and show Kenyans that you can make a decision and that this thing that you want to do, you can do it.
Politically speaking, that will be suicide.
So choose again.
Resign your position, which nobody has kicked you out of. A powerful position like a deputy president
that you've removed yourself from.
Politically speaking, it would amount to suicide. Because now, look, in this country, one of the things that we see very often, and there's an explanation given for it, people who are known to have some form of wealth going into politics. I'm saying some because it is some wealth.
It's the next thing.
Yes. And the question is it that they're interested in politics? And the answer usually is no. They feel that so long as they're in the political space, they're in a position to protect their wealth. Politics in this country is seen as the zenith of power. When you're there, you are in a position to do very many things or to prevent many things from happening to you. So the issue of the deputy president resigning, that is out of the question.
Is that of the question that it's not going to happen because he's going to...
He's not going to resign.
He's going to, it will be political suicide.
Look, as a politician in this country, it would be foolhardy. Resign. So that all your flanks are now laid bare. You have nothing. So long as you are in the office, even if we are given the impression that the office is powerless, but so long as you are in that office, you are still the deputy president. We don't have assistant deputy presidents in this country. It is one individual. It is one position. So the issue of him, look, we are talking of resigning because it's a culture that we have seen in the West. Something untoward is mentioned about you, you vacate the position, either so that you can be investigated. But what is our culture here? You more or less have to be pushed out. We've had 1 or 2 cases, 3 or 4 cases of people who actually step aside willingly. One Kiraitu Murungi did such a thing.
Right.
You don't find it often.
Enough.
Just often. Forget enough. If people simply don't. What you hear are statements like, over my dead body.
It could just be.
Some actually say it. Resign. Over my dead body. Now, it tells you the mindset that our leaders have. But it brings me to something that I want to point out. You know, all these individuals who have had procedures, processes named after them, it is because they have conducted research on certain aspects of human life and come up with something that has universally been found to be true. When someone is in a position of power, and even if they're not in a position of power, but they seem to deem themselves to be something they're not, as in, one, they're more important than they actually are, they're cleverer than they actually are, they're more powerful than they actually are. And if they function as though this is their norm, there is something called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yes.
Okay? Named after David Dunning and Justin Kruger. Okay? Overestimating either your knowledge or ability. Now, overestimating, you must understand, doesn't mean you don't have it. You do.
But you think it's a lot more than it actually is.
Yes. And sometimes, I'm now adding to what these people found out. Sometimes it's not entirely false. Circumstances may conspire to give you the impression that you actually have more power than you actually do. For instance, look at politicians and the way they conduct themselves. And I'm talking about from MCA, MP, right up to the president. At some point, you get the impression they forget that they were actually elected to that job. And that their job is actually to serve people, not to lord it over them. You get that impression. So the position and the power that it bestows upon you presents you with an opportunity to overestimate your own ability and your own knowledge. Now, it is something that happens often. But in our country, what spurs it even further is not just power, money. We live in a country where there are so many poor people that when you have a lot of money, it gives you that feeling of great power because you seem to be in a position, and that seeming seems to be also a reality of being able to do many things that other people cannot do.
Superiority as well.
Yes, it does. But why I'm referring this to this particular concept is because they forget one simple thing. It's also temporary. You see, everything that happens and on this planet has a time span. It does not matter what it is. It has to come to an end at some point. It doesn't really matter. And if you're lucky and it doesn't come to an end, it must change. It always does. And no one has been clever enough to outdo it. For instance, no one has been clever enough to live forever. We all die.
But then it just keeps pointing for me, and it just keeps pointing to that one thing that remains in my mind, that anybody who comes and puts themselves in this position where we see the deputy president putting himself in now, because he's not the first. He's not the first to have had this kind of thinking whereby I can essentially do what I want and nobody can ask me by virtue of the fact that I hold this particular office, without realizing that it is, yes, temporary, without realizing that the people who, or forgetting that essentially the people who put you there are the ones who made the decision, and that it is to their whims that you should be pandering. It doesn't come out. It doesn't come out. But the one thing that is stark clear to me is that it is their opinions, it is their livelihoods that matter, and not yours as people. So in my opinion, to me, it is very clear. You are not okay with the way things are going right now. You feel as though you have been pushed out. You're not ready to have a conversation. You've decided to take on a different outfit through which you will push your political agenda. That means this current position that you occupy, that you are essentially being paid by Kenyans to fill, you are not doing your job. Leave. To me, it is very simple. All these other things that we are adding is sensationalist. It's emotive. We are talking about victimization, things back and forth that do not matter.
But
they don't matter, CT.
But you are
not doing the thing that they have put you there to do.
Do you have a valid point? But consider, we are talking about a politician. We're talking about politicians in general in this country. Many of our elected leaders believe that the duty they have is to speak, not do. And to say all manner of things. Again, these also must come to an end, and will come to an end. If you ask my opinion, and I were to look at this particular situation that we're talking about, and the gathering of so-called 100 legislators, the question that, well, it came, I thought about it yesterday evening. I was thinking about it even this morning when I was coming to work. What are the circumstances that leads an individual, a group of people, a country, anyone, to want to present a show of might? Because this is what this is.
Or when you're attacked.
Yes.
Or when you feel cornered.
You are under attack.
Yes, or you feel cornered. That you feel you must show some might to, dispel this supposed appearance of weakness.
You know what I find strange? This flaky lot of
the flanks. Flanks. The ones who are flanking
You cannot get more flaky than a politician in this country. This is the point. This is so ostensibly a show of might. But my friend, with these individuals, these particular individuals, it is anything but that. Because these individuals will change at the drop of a hand.
When something shows up that's a little bit more shiny that they can look at and toy with, the jumping ship that you will see that will happen in this country will be akin to something that you see in the movies. Incredible movement will happen. There will be a shift in ideologies. There will be a shift in loyalties. And these people who are here making noise now saying that they stand with the deputy president, they will move in a manner you will not believe what happened. It's something that will be worth watching. We're going to open up the phone lines in a short while and have you talk with us about what you think. Should the deputy president resign in light of all that is happening, leave the position and pursue these other interests? 0719-012-600 is the number to call. We'll take your calls in a short while. It's now 7:30. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, and the conversation continues.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
Gone are the days days when hiring should be about hitting the brick wall, because we understand how much it means to have the ideal candidate working for you and your organization. That's why at Standard Jobs website, we offer the complete employer dashboard that lets you interact fully with applicants, lets you track the full hiring process through a qualified specific smart search tool. What's more, we offer a full-on custom branded page that lets your company stand out with your own to choose custom page. So visit www.standardmedia.co.ke/jobs today and let's help you find the next ideal candidate for you.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. The weather with Spice FM.
It's mostly cloudy in Nairobi at 14, highs of 23 today. Cloudy conditions at 13 in Nyeri, highs of 21. We'll see highs of 24 in a sunny Nakuru at 14. It's also sunny in Eldoret at 12, highs of 23. 29 will be the high in a mostly sunny Kisumu, currently at 18. It's also sunny in Kakamega at 17, highs of 28. 28 will be the high in Mombasa. It's raining at 24. It's also raining in Malindi at 25. It'll go to highs of 28 today. 26 will be the high recorded in Kampala, mostly sunny at 20. 21 and sunny in Dar es Salaam, highs of 29 and lows of 21. 23 will be the high in Johannesburg. It's 13 degrees and clear at the moment. Mostly clear conditions in Lagos at 25 with highs of 30 and lows of 24. 29 will be the high in Kinshasa. It's cloudy at 21.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM.
Have you seen them? Am I lying?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Everyone in Wasingishu was asking me what channel is Spice FM.
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have
What
you.
a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. 24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
At NCBA, we know it's more than a car loan. It's the many road trips you make. Call 0711056444 or visit ncbagroup.com for more information on asset finance. At NCBA Bank, the numbers that matter to you matter to us.
In the middle of traffic hour, and it still continues to build up. Langata Road, my goodness, it was moving a little bit smoother a while ago, but not so much right now. Getting into the city via Jogo Road also right now is looking the mess. We're seeing some traffic on Mombasa Road headed towards North Airport from that area, but then also just around the Imara Daima area, it's clogging up. Thika Road getting into the city as well. Looks like it's going to slow things down considerably, especially around the Pangani underpass, and we've seen some spots coming back on this side of things. Bunyala Road at the roundabouts coming from Aerodrome Road, Uhuru Highway through to Westlands in and outbound. Also some issues there. Gong Road as you get to the City Mortuary roundabout, flowing very smoothly down through community and into the city. That looks okay. So let's keep an eye on things, guys. Are you stuck somewhere? Have you found a good route? Let us know. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Tengesa kidole, agano kidole. Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
This morning, and the conversation continues in the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation, where you tuned in from around the country. Our live streams are up on SpiceFM KE on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And we're asking you to join in the conversation with us this morning. Nduoko in the studio today with CT Muga, and looking at some of the things that are affecting us. And the conversation right now is really around what is going on in the presidency. I think it does a lot when you're looking at what those who are ruling the nation at the time, if they're having a bit of a spat, that's different. But this prolonged issue, it started off with, are we speaking the same language when we're talking about development in the country? Are we speaking the same language about what the presidency and the current administration ought to be doing? Are we then implementing the same things along the line? Or would it appear, as has said, that you've allowed somebody who's not in government to infiltrate government and then start to dictate what should be happening? Does he, as a deputy president, then reserve the right to pull out of what would have been, the collective administration? Should you? And I've been saying this morning, if it is not working and you have expressed just so, not once, not twice, it has been almost the mantra now that is being repeated over and over, not just by you, but by the generals in your army as well, then perhaps the time is ripe for you to say, all right, hands up, political suicide or not. Because one of the things that we've been hearing is the strength of this new party or this new outfit, that it is clear that they have some kind of influence in the country and that somebody's listening. Some people are listening and have latched on to this hustler narrative, have latched on to this bottoms-up approach, have done all of this and said, you know what, this is actually the way we want to go. If that is true, then pursue it.
But that narrative, if we were to go by the response that the political leaders in this country have shown us, is that indeed it is something worth taking note of, because suddenly every political leader in this country was a hustler of some form or the other. And everybody now became a hustler. Everyone was hustling in their own little unique way, but they were hustling. So, in as far as that empowerment narrative can be spoken of, yes, it's a narrative that has actually caught on, but it is a narrative. For it to make sense, for it to create jobs, for it to stop the hunger, for it to actually benefit the so-called mwananchi, the so-called hustler, other things have to be done. One doesn't hear a story of what this thing that ought to be done. We've heard of the bottom-up approach. Again, it is an economic theory that when put into practice has been seen to work. But in our country, we've had forms of it. The district focus was a bottom-up approach. The only problem was that it was the leaders at the district level who made those decisions. The moment you have CDF, it is supposed to be a bottom-up approach because the CDF is taking money to the level of the member of parliament. But now you have a situation where you have MCAs. What am I saying? I am saying that the solutions that are supposed to be presented to this country are being presented in the form of words and are that incomplete. Sloganeering and more sloganeering. When one talks about development, when one talks of infrastructure, truth be told, these were plans that were started in the Kibaki-Raila Odinga era. Kibaki government, then the Kibaki-Raila coalition. That's when it was started. And it should be. Because capital projects such as these ones here don't take a year or two, even 5 years. Some of them take up to 20 years. So successive governments come and follow up with it. SGL Railway, same thing. Many of the ideas that we see here. But if we were to look at the broken promises, the unfulfilled promises, which were made by this particular government. And if what use us as a yardstick for judging the performance of one of the principles, then you'd say it's dismal. Because the thing that is consistent is promises, consistent and fulfilled promises, consistency, more talk. That's the consistency. But as to the things that have actually been done, the other thing you hear is people being prevented from doing what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we have a devolved system of government in this country. So not everything can be at the national level. And every part of this country has a county government. So the reality is, if we're to go by the statement that I was reading an article earlier on about the Treasury saying that, folks, we've actually given you the money that is actually due to you, isn't it? Yes. The 316 billion that was outstanding, they said they gave. They even gave 43 billion specifically for clearing the outstanding. Yes.
We didn't hear about this.
Yes.
We heard, save for it coming from the Treasury. We've heard the complaints beforehand.
Of late, have you heard even a squeak from our? They have an opportunity to call us and say we haven't received this money. Actually, what you're reading is that what the government usually does. It tells you what it's planning to do. This article clearly states they were given 316.5 billion allocation for the financial year settled, 28.5 for the conditional grant done. 43.5 billion for counties in April with done for pending bills done. So if you're talking about things not getting done, the focus ought to be not these blanket statements of things that ought to be done, things that shouldn't be done. A handshake cannot interfere with what happens in 47 counties.
But CT, this is interesting because I would like to, and I think I want to hear from folks today, just to remind you, it's 0719-012-600. That's our line. We're opening the lines now. But the thing is that if you look on one hand, there's so many different sides to different arguments. But on this particular argument is that if you're saying that the deputy president is unhappy with the way things have been and you're asking him to resign, why is it then that on the other side of things, you're also not telling the president to resign by bringing in somebody from the opposition to basically shake hands and then decide on how you will run the government in the future? That if you don't use that kind of argument that you too, me too, anybody else too, is speaking out of both sides of their mouth. That you cannot say that the deputy president on one hand is doing a particular thing. Meanwhile, the president himself has invited the opposition into government to now dictate or chart the course of a future political dispensation. So you can't argue on one side without arguing on the other side. So are we basically saying that both of them should pack up this thing and go?
Presidents don't resign on this continent.
It doesn't happen.
Have you heard of a president resigning? This story began just a couple of years. We got our independence in 1963. 3 years down the line, going to 4, Raila Odinga's father had a difference with the president. Uhuru Kenyatta's father, Jomo Kenyatta, they had a difference. But so sharp was the difference that they decided, the best thing to do here, this thing of power being removed from you, it happened then. At that point in time, the president of KANU was also the president of the country. The vice president of the party was also the vice president of the country. But clever individuals decided at the Limuru conference that what they were going to do, they were going to give every province a vice president. So the vice president's position in the party was diluted. What then happened was that the person who then came as the possible successor to the president in the event of the president passing away was the Secretary General, who happened to be in Tomboya at that particular point in time. This issue of vice presidents and power being taken away from them by virtue of some movement didn't start now. But the example that we saw, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga decided, since we can't seem to be seeing eye to eye, let me get onto an outfit that I think would serve my purposes.
And left.
People crossed the floor, and as anecdotally as I've heard, over 3/4 of the people crossed with him. Then again, some clever person said that is all right. It's good to cross, but you were elected on a KANU ticket. So if you wish to go on that side, you need to be on another ticket. We had elections in the places where all the people had crossed. Some people just crossed back to where they had come from. This election may not serve
We're not
me.
doing it.
People traditionally, when they differ with their principles, they leave. Same, Raila Odinga, when he differed with not even Moi, in Ford Kenya itself, which was his father's party, he moved. He had differences. Meaning, he went with his differences where it could be served. We are seeing a movement from the party that has served the interest of our deputy president, but not with a physical movement. It is words, 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 and more words.
To me, it's a classic example of you want to have your cake and eat it too. It's a classic example of that. And this is the thing. Are they not realizing, or we are not realizing that this narrative is not new. It's not new. This thing that you're asking people to embrace is not new. It's been practiced the world over. But what I'm saying is, do you realize already that people have latched onto it? And if you believe that your position is so strong, do it. Walk across the room like that example that you've given us today. And we're saying that, we're picking sides today. We're being partisan. I don't think being partisan. I think it's making a clear decision and following that decision with action. And I think that is the problem here. That hardly ever do we see a decision then being followed by action and then arriving in implementation. That there has been for too long in governance saying, all right, we're going to do this when we get into power. Okay, we're going to do this and really do care for you and your livelihoods. Then give the power, and all of that is flushed down the toilet. It doesn't happen.
Actually, you see, I find that there is no harm in having your cake and eat it if that's what you want.
At the detriment of?
Precisely.
To the detriment of?
Precisely.
Yeah.
But what do you think you have also set in motion? And what makes you think that this thing that you've set in motion will also not come back to bite you at a specific time? Because essentially, what you're saying is there are rules that people understand. There are traditions that people understand, but we are going to go against those traditions. This is how we are going to be handling these particular issues. The unfortunate thing is that if it is something that is associated with your position and that of your principle, what makes you think that the people around you will not do exactly the same thing that you are doing? Give you lip service and say that we support you. But when the time comes, and if it looks slightly uncomfortable and slightly unfavorable to be in that position, that they will move. Political alliances in this country historically are seasonal. We've seen it. Now, you don't need to extrapolate too much of that issue.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to see many alliances in the next 12
and
months.
This conglomeration, believe me, is more seasonal than any other that we've seen. This one will split in so many directions. It'll be surprised. You will not be able to pinpoint where people have moved to. There is the notion of a show of strength, but often that very action that is supposed to present you with the notion that is a show of strength achieves the complete opposite. It shows that you are more than concerned. The situation around you has got you concerned and thinking, and that is why you need to show up your support and to show that you are not alone. And when you need to show that you are not alone, what it actually means is that you've gotten to the point where you are beginning to actually wonder whether indeed you aren't really actually alone.
So then you want to ask the question that leaders who put themselves up for election, that those who put themselves up and say, please choose me, are they interested right now as you see it? Because we have this psychophancy that is a bit worrying. As you are going crazy about a particular leader, whomever it may be, wherever it is, the deputy president, Raila Odinga, Uhuru Kenyatta, as you're looking at these individuals, are they concerned about you, the people, or are they concerned about them, the person, and how they can make it politically to be expedient in this country? Is that what they're looking for? How often do we look at where our interests really do lie?
By the way, I made a mistake. In this country, we have seen somebody resigning from a high office. Joseph Murumbi, who took over from Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, actually resigned as vice president.
Because he couldn't take it.
Well, he had other things to do. He actually resigned and pursued other things that he found to be more to his taste.
Well, all right then. The numbers matter. They absolutely do. And that's what we're seeing, that, even now in the country, everybody's talking about the numbers. Who will be on my side? Well, I'll tell you who is on your side as we take a break now at 10 minutes to 8 o'clock. NCBA Bank is on your side and is saying, we are interested in the numbers that matter to you. So when you come and have a conversation with us about looking for a facility to buy your home, when you want to buy that vehicle, when you want to boost that business, that'll essentially make you rack up the numbers that are important to you and your loved ones, NCBA wants to hold your hand and be by your side. NCBA Bank, go for it.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
At NCBA, we know it's more than a business loan. It's the flexibility and time you get to spend with loved ones. Call 0711 056 444 or visit ncbagroup.com for more information on business banking. At NCBA Bank, the numbers that matter to you matter to us.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94
conversation this morning, and we're looking at what is going on in the country politically. Where are you tuned in from this morning? In Nairobi, around the country. Our live streams on SpiceFM KE, on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Nduoko and CT Muga with you in the studio this morning. And just looking at some of your comments on social media as we continue with this conversation today. Victor Chi says the DP Ruto should leave out of that office because there's nothing that he's doing at the moment. Boyit says, so according to you, it's okay for President Kenyatta to establish a coalition with ODM, an opposition party, but very unokay, for DP William Ruto to chart a different political party or a different political path. They are not husband and wife, remember? Raila Odinga went through the same frustration under Kibaki and used to lament often. RCs and DCs were used to boycott his functions too. Remember Nusu Kabeti?
Kibeti.
Kibeti is what it says. Bila Hatacho. He too was being paid by the people. Let's be fair. It's President Kenyatta who is deliberately frustrating his DP. Okay. I'm told I'm analyzing out of context today. I'm very biased. I think you should pick a side, but okay. You see, there's history here. Remember the Executive Order number 1 of 2019? Now the DP is an elected office, and it's the president who began flirting with the opposite side. The president can as well resign. No? I've been on William Ruto's case is what I'm being told, and we've started it wrong. He did not chase himself from government. Well, a third party made the Jubilee party waters murky. Should he resign, as you're saying? He will expose himself to powers that are hellbent to destroy him. Savatia says, no one follows the supreme law you're referring to, even the president. The two guys had a deal. One of them went renegade. What would you do if you were the DP?
Sometimes I feel that we're actually involved in a debate and on a subject whose details we're not all fully informed about. Because we know what the leaders want us to know. We know what we were told were part of this coalition that formed the government. We also know what we know from the statements that were made. And when people part, it was they seem to have parted. But we forget very quickly that the Tanga and the Kieleweke grouping started long before any handshake was shaken. The issue of charting paths that seemed at the time, but of course everybody denied it. No. They are on the same page. They are just doing this thing. They're doing this thing. But what brought it to the fore was now what we call the handshake. And yet, the points that are being made by some of our listeners are actually extremely valid. But I'm saying I don't know all the facts. I do not know everything that has happened between these two principles to get to this point. I don't know. And whatever it is, there must be a very good reason. It's for the same reason that I say the issues that happened, the goings on at Wilson Airport, I cannot really comment on it effectively because I am not privy to all the information of what it is that actually happened. I can only say, yes, this is what happened. Yes, there were people at Wilson Airport. They were going to Uganda in the public domain. But beyond that,
difficult to be able to tell exactly.
With great clarity? No. I can only say that it's clear there is something. If we know that the deputy president was stopped, yes. If we look at clips or we have seen in the social media, Mheshimiwa Sudi and the comments he's making, that's the information that one gets. But beyond that, you read in the papers what the PS of the Interior has spoken of, the things they have said. All that I can say with certainty is that this is an ongoing saga, and that with the passage of time, we'll get to know a lot more about it. But let me also talk about something else that I do know. I also know with great clarity that everyone we're talking about here is a politician, and that it would be silly, it would be short-sighted to take at face value the things that politicians say, especially in times when they want to present themselves as the best possible candidate for us to vote for in a presidential election. You need to be very, very, very careful about what it is that you believe. And whoever supports these people, remember, these are politicians, and the support is based on who they think might actually get the ticket. The same support you see for the deputy president now, if it appeared that Musalia Mudavadi had the sort of muscle that you would see a similar following. You would see a similar following for Kalonzo, you will see a similar following. So, tune in.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned, because it's likely to change as you go along.
It is going to change as we go along.
But then you see, the thing is that people are dragged in to this. People's minds are dragged in, and what could be, it's like there's a movement and everybody is throwing their beliefs into this movement. And then suddenly the movement could change. So then you ask yourself, why is it so easy to lean onto something? And then perhaps those who are pushing that particular narrative know this. They know that it's very easy for people to lean into a particular narrative and to be able to sway them in a particular direction. And my message continues to be, and my thinking continues to be, that people who are listening to these messages, look in between. What is being split? Look at what remains on either side of the water. Look at what remains. What are you being told about what a potential leader is going to be able to do for you as a Kenyan? In this political space today, all the rumbling, all the noise, what does it actually mean for you and the country? And how are you making your decision based on what is being said? Should sides be picked? Absolutely. Should you pick a side? And for me, the sides are very clear. Are you for the people or are you for the people? Are you for the country or are you for the people? It cannot be that you're for you.
But our politicians are precisely that. I mean, this issue of standing up for the people. There was a time when you talked about standing up for the people in countries and in governments that were single-party governments. You ended up in jail. Because essentially you're saying this is wrong. You ended up in jail. In this country, we don't live in such a time. In Tanzania, there are those who would argue they still live in such a time where you can't go around opposing. There are countries around us where you can. Right now, we have a full-blown war taking place in our neighbor Ethiopia. Full-blown. Those are Ethiopians fighting fellow Ethiopians.
That's true. Well, the conversation continues. We're going to hear from you in the next hour as well. We're getting round to 8 o'clock, and this is Kenya's biggest conversation. It is the Situation Room, and we're having conversations about, what's going on in terms of our politics and how can we make sure the right decisions are made. It's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life
The Center for Disease Control has warned that COVID-19 infections in Africa have increased by 14% in the past 1 week. These as 400 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine are expected in African countries next week.
3 countries are actually experiencing a fourth wave. That is Algeria, Kenya, and Tunisia. Over the last week, we recorded 273,000 new cases across the continent. And the highest proportion of these new cases came from Southern Africa with 48%, Northern Africa 38%, East Africa 7%, West Africa 4%, and Central Africa 1%.
A total of 6.8 million people are infected in Africa, with 3.4% of all cases in the world. Human rights groups have called on the government to expedite investigations into the cause of death of 2 brothers in Embu. In a statement, they rejected the explanation from the police that Benson Njeru Ndwiga and Emmanuel Mutura Ndwiga, aged 22 and 19 years respectively, died after jumping out of a moving police car. The 2 were arrested last Sunday for violating COVID-19 protocols before their bodies were found in a mortuary. 22 people who died in the fire tragedy in Malanga, Siaya County will be buried today. 3 families whose DNA test results were delayed have been advised to pick them up from Yala and Siaya hospitals before the funeral. 12 families were forced to undergo DNA tests as the bodies of their loved ones were burnt beyond recognition. Kenya Film and Classification Board CEO Ezekiel Muthui has dismissed allegations that he was fired from the board by ICTCS Joe Musheru. On Twitter, Muthui asked Kenyans to ignore the rumors, saying they are not true. This comes just hours after Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. announced Muthui's dismissal on Twitter. Senator Muthui indicated that Ezekiel had been fired by Musheru despite KFCB's board of directors approving him to continue serving as chief executive officer. Now, potato farmers in Elgeyo Marakwet County have complained of low prices after the government announced new rules to control the sector. According to the farmers, 1 sack of potatoes currently sells for only 500 shillings compared to before, where the prices ranged between 2,000 and 3,000 shillings. Buyers have also complained of low income as many farmers have harvested their produce and sent them to the markets.
Hatupati ile profit yenye ulikuwa anasema ukikata ya mafuta ile alepa barabara sesi yote saa hakuna kitu, tunapata kitu kidogo kabisa. Ile tunasema tu usikae njaa.
Ununue mbegu 2200. Mambo na kuspray unatumia, tuseme unaweza spray kitu kama mara 5 ndio mpaka utoe 5. Sasa itaweza cost kitu kama 3500. Na kukichumulisha yote, tuseme unaweza toa kitu kama kunia 10 kwa hapo. Then useme kunia 10 ufanye hiyo expenses, bado utakuwa chini kama mkulima.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto.
.5 SpiceFM, Kisumu.
Here's your traffic. Kama kujogoro tujue, by the way, traffic leo ni ngori inaanzia Donholm all the way hadi past Makadara. We're looking at some traffic this morning around Jogo Road, and it is taking us through into the city actually very slowly this morning, and we will see that it builds up as we get then towards Landis Road and then out into the city. We're looking at also traffic coming off of Bunyala Road. It seems to be quite stuck there. We'll keep an eye on things this morning. Langata Road, that's the no-go zone for today. Very slow as you get to the roundabout at the Timor roundabout. And then also on Thika Road, it's still getting quite clogged as you join with that. It's coming off Kiambu Road. So those are the spots that we're looking at. Going out west into Naivasha, out into Nakuru, out into Kisumu this morning. Not too much of an issue there, so we'll keep an eye on things, all right? SpiceFM KE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Let's text on 40127. Keep things moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day.
The third hour now of this conversation. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Ndruko and CT Muga in the room with you this morning at 5 minutes after 8 o'clock. And the conversation does continue as we look at quite a number of issues being raised in the country today, and giving you an opportunity to weigh in on some of this and hear from you as well as we get off the conversation. Let's start this hour with Medali Asiku. CT.
What has horns must not be hidden in a sack.
What has horns must not be hidden in a sack.
No. Find somewhere else to hide it, please. And let that somewhere else not be a sack.
Okay. So, this week, or last week rather, schools opened. And then this week, the Form 1 candidates went back to school. And if anything, what has been cracked wide open is a lot of the discrepancies that happen when admission is taking place in schools. Now, members of parliament have told us, or rather they've shown some kind of surprise as to what is happening in high schools when it comes to admission. Of course, the assumption is that they did not know that some of these things were taking place. And as is being reported today, we are seeing that, the conditions, MPs, members of parliament, National Assembly are horrified. Schools are not prepared to take care of the surging numbers arising from the 100% transition policy. So the CS, Ministry of Education, said, you know what? Everybody will go to high school. It doesn't matter what your scores were, whether you were at the bottom of the table, whether you were at the top. Everybody is going to high school. Now, I think it is a good thing. So everybody has a stab at education. Now, the conditions in most schools, as we are seeing them now, is that most schools are not able to accommodate the numbers and still offer quality education. Because, number one, they don't have enough space. The facilities are not adequate to take in. Some of them already had multiple streams. Now, with the intake of more students, that means they had to increase the streams. The infrastructure problem in schools is something that is quite huge. They have to accommodate huge student populations, and they are currently blaming the government for failing to address infrastructure in schools. And even as we're trying to get better and better at this thing called education by changing the curriculum, moving from 844 to CBC, doing all these things, tweaking the education policy and making sure that we are now delivering education almost to the doorstep, at least to close vicinity of people so that they don't have to travel, which is essentially what the new education policy is offering, or rather suggesting. That in as much as these things are being said, the situation on the ground is not commensurate to the suggestion. That we want to make it seem this way, but the infrastructure is not allowing us to do so. And rather than pushing for a place whereby the infrastructure then is accommodating these new suggestions and these ideas, that we are saying things, but we are not practicing them. The state of secondary schools where students are packed closely together in classes poses a health hazard, and that's one thing that we are looking at now, according to the Narok Woman representative Soy Pantuya. Children are lumped up in congested classrooms. It's a disaster waiting to happen. They're implementing a policy at the expense of compromising the quality of education in our schools. So here we are on one hand wanting to do better in terms of improving the education policy, but it is actually putting learners at risk because we are cramping them up in spaces.
We're packing them up like sardines.
Like sardines, exactly. So the infrastructure is not adequate. Neither are we saying, let's build more. There is no funding. There is not, right now, the funding that we're looking at is to take care of the current situation. In terms of moving forward, it doesn't exist. And so as we look at this today, what we are saying is that if education truly is going to improve in this country, you have to look at it as a whole.
You know what COVID has helped us do? It has helped us understand this story of numbers and the adequacy of learning under these circumstances. Why do I say this? The overpopulation of children, and I'm using the word overpopulation deliberately, in public schools has been a subject of debate for a long time. And because of it, we've seen a mushrooming of private schools, privately owned schools. Okay. However, the quality of education as ought to be guaranteed by right as per our constitution, it's a fundamental right that a young person or a person of school-going age must and should expect. So when the ministry says everybody must go to school, they're merely adhering to what is the right of these school-age-going children. Okay? But a problem here arises even as we look at what the pandemic has done for us. It brings to the core the one element that is often fundamental yet really unforeseen when it comes to bringing things to a head. COVID has brought these matters to a head. You need children to learn. Parents need to be able to afford the learning of their children. Schools need to be able to accommodate these students. And against what backdrop of an ever-increasing population? We increase by a minimum of 1 million children every single year.
Right.
1 million. So, if you look at these numbers, and you look at the school facilities that we have, woefully inadequate. Even with the private sector coming in, woefully inadequate. The demand is there. If the demand wasn't there, business-savvy individuals would not start their own schools. And then there are schools that are started by church organizations, there are schools that are started by communities. This has been ongoing from the longest time. In fact, our history is replete with examples of this nature. But the one fundamental thing that I think is going to bedevil us for the longest time is whether we can overcome this demon of impunity that manifests itself in corruption. Because even as we talk about inadequacies, there are very many schools in this country, public schools, that get public funding and are able to make do with this funding, despite everything else that we say.
How?
Well, this is how it goes. You see, from what I have observed, one of the strengths that a school has is two things. One, an alumni body that is strong enough, a PA body that is strong enough, Parents Association body that is strong enough, and a school management board that is also strong. Now, I use the word strong here loosely, but those who have given their minds to ensuring that this school runs, so that even if the money that is given is supposedly short, the shortfall is met. But why did I bring in the issue of corruption? Because it exacerbates the situation. It means that monies that ought to go to the learning of the students doesn't go to the learning of the students. When I say learning, it's not just classroom.
Yeah.
No. If it's the feeding program, everything that has to do with that learning process. If that money is inadequate, institutions that have this support system fare better. They fare much, much, much better. And they're able to cope. Because one could argue that there are schools that actually put into practice the principle of public participation. Because the entire community participates in the running of these institutions. It works. The public of the alumni, the public of the Parents Association, the board of management, and then the management of the teachers themselves and how they go about their business. Because we point out schools that don't run well, but there are schools that actually run well with the issues that we keep pointing out. There are many schools in this country that even have farms. Not the bulk, some. There are farms. And some of these schools ensure that the farms have enough produce to cater for the needs of their students.
Right? So it's sustainable.
Yes. Some of them even take it further. they even have a business element attached to it so that they can actually sell. So they will have cows, they will have grain, they will have vegetables, they have it. And it's part and parcel of how they go about their business.
So they've understood that sustainability is what is going to make it work. And they say, well, you're not able to just depend on one thing to be able to survive. No. Now, you talk about a community approach to be able to do things. So then you keep people accountable. So education is just one of the issues, right? There are many. The other day we were talking about health, and we're looking at how if you cannot care for the most vulnerable in society, that is the measure to which you are performing as a nation. Right? We talk about other things where we are lacking here, that we've, basically accounted for corruption in the way in which we do things, whether it's at a national level, county level, as low as the ward level, that it seems to have been something that has been ingrained. Are we then saying that if you had more participation by communities, by offices, by individuals, right up to the very top, then what you essentially would do is that you're able to keep people accountable, and the kind of losses that we see would not be happening to the level that they're happening?
Yes, they'd be reduced significantly, because you see, everybody would now have not just an interest, but a manifested interest by their participation. You see, when the school administration is left on their own, more or less, the board meets when they're supposed to meet 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year. The PA meet when there's some harambe that they want to. That will not cut it. Now, not every school, or not every day school, not every school is able to do the things that I'm saying. But I'm saying that we have seen, and there are schools that manage their affairs. They do. And if you find a school such as that one, you will find that the things that I'm saying, all these variables have come together, and it's their coming together that ensure that these things work. Now, there are those who will argue and say, but look, if you take that approach, then you are removing the responsibility of the government from what it ought to be. I'm saying, yes, there's that possibility, but what I'm looking at is the reality. This is what the government is doing. The government clearly doesn't have the funds to give all the money that it's supposed to. It's clear. There's no question about it not being clear. So then, should we continue talking about the inadequacy of the government, or should we find solutions to the problem? Because these students must learn. This process of educating the young in our society must continue.
So then, is it the responsibility of those entrusted, or those stakeholders, to then say, you know what, we cannot depend on government completely? So are we getting to the point? I mean, have things gotten so bad that you're getting to the point whereby you say, this is government's responsibility in order to do 1, 2, 3, right? It is clear that they are not able to. And in a lot of cases where we're talking about the ability is hinged on funds. It is not adequate. It is not enough. It's like going to get water out of a stone. It's not going to happen. So the responsibility then shifts to stakeholders, be it parents, be it community, be it who, to say, let us then come together to see how we can do something about this. Let us then offer it up. So are we essentially saying that the responsibility of government then becomes shared?
You know, once upon a time, health services were provided for free of charge, completely, as in not a cent. Then, in the Moi era, what you're referring to now as shared responsibility was brought in. And these things come in when the government looks and realizes that, you know something, the reality of our situation is such that what we promised that we would do, we are not able to do. It's just a reality. So let us share this responsibility. Let us see how we can share it. Ideally, even primary school education is supposed to be absolutely free. Reality, can it actually be absolutely free?
No, because the government needs somebody to chip in.
Yes. So it's free because, as you say correctly, people are always aiding us with this particular process.
Yeah.
Now, the reality of our education sector as well as the health sector is precisely that. And if you look and understand, you will realize that what the concept I was referring to was called cost sharing. You see, cost sharing should also accompany responsibility sharing in this way, holding, as you correctly put it, people to account. Meaning, yes, this is what we pay, but we would like to know if it's actually doing what you should do. For instance, can anybody ever give an account of the money people pay to hospitals? Because hospital is a 24-hour operation.
Yes, it is.
And people do pay. And when people go to hospital, usually it's because they're unwell, and they will pay. They look for the money to pay. Now tell me, do you ever hear of maybe it has happened and I haven't heard of it, of a report that we collected X amount of shillings and we purposed to do, like the fuel levy. Every once in a while, you will be told this particular road has been built or has been repaired by the fuel levy. You will be told the fuel levy that we raised was this amount, and this is what we've done with it. Do you ever hear? The responsibility of holding those who are mandated with that task of keeping that particular institution running, it's something that has been fairly lacking. So people do exactly what they like, and they do it how they like it and when they like it. And then we have this merry-go-round of a situation that is always feeding into itself. This doesn't work, and it feeds into something else that doesn't work, and it feeds into something else that doesn't work. To understand this, in this same country, you will find private schools run. Why? Because the principles that we're talking about are actually put into operation. That's why they function.
Yes.
If they were allowed to do exactly what happens in public schools, they would also have the same problems as public schools.
Okay. But the way in which the system has been designed from the beginning, just look at it. I mean, I cry, beloved.
Which system are you referring to?
Education, right?
Yes.
Or even the government system, if you want to look at it. And I'm saying, I cry, beloved country, regardless of which country it is that we're talking about. Is it not possible for these things that have been set up, that have been systemized, to be run 100% by government? I keep asking myself, why do we continue to see these lapses? Why? We say that the funds are not adequate, so stakeholders have to come in and share the responsibility, which is all right, which can be done, which is being done in very many cases. But is it that it had to get to that point? Is it not possible to have these things running properly? Is it not possible for the funds to be adequate? Is it not possible for the implementation to be done right? Is it not possible for accountability to run through and through? Because it seems to me the way things are, we will continuously have these issues, that we will not be able to have an education policy as succinct and clear as it is. We will not be able to have it running because we don't have adequate funding, and we don't have adequate funding because there's been mismanagement and appropriation, and it just continues to be over and over and over again.
The largest budgeting item in our yearly budget is education.
It's education.
Yes. Now, there's something a reality that must be faced. Some of the things that people talk about, historical issues, we're a much smaller population. Somewhere along the line, we didn't quite plan for the numbers that we have. And because we didn't plan, the numbers overtook our capacity. We are groping. We are chasing after it. And then when free education came in and we're told anybody of school going age can actually go to primary school, that's what showed us all these numbers had been out of school because they couldn't afford to go to school. When it was now they were able to go because they've been told they could go, we saw the numbers. Somehow, adequate action to cope with this ever-rising number of young people who need education was not taken care of. It's the reality. So if it wasn't taken care of, so then what do we do now? Because here we are. We have this situation. What do we do?
And it keeps growing.
Yes, it keeps growing.
The population of school-going children next year would have increased by another?
Yes. There are parts of the country, very few, where that isn't quite a problem. Yes, the schools could be argued could use more students. That's the best way I could put it. But the bulk of the bulk of our counties face a problem of having more children than they know what to do with, wanting to go to primary school and eventually secondary school. Now, if you look at the rates of children, the number of children who drop out of primary school, often it's not that they didn't pass the exams. No, it's they cannot afford. Because secondary school, there is no issue of you pay.
You pay.
Yes. So some simply opt out because they finish primary school at the age of 15, some 16, some 14. They figure, I can
do something else.
Yes, exactly. So you are asking, the TVETs that we keep talking about, the village polytechnics that once existed, solution isn't just providing primary school education. Solution is ensuring that the go-to places after you've gone through a certain level of education exist so that you don't just hang loose. You have a place to go to. There is an option beyond formal education. And this is an emphasis that has to exist.
But it doesn't, because
it's inadequate.
Exactly. And because the focus primarily is on the fact that we don't have enough money to be able to get these things done.
Yes.
And that, we have some deplorable situations within which learners now have to be in order to get an adequate education, because there just is not enough. And if we're looking at education specifically, do we have stories of scandal where there's, misappropriation back and forth, etc., etc.? And maybe the answer would be no, that you don't hear such huge stories of scandal. So maybe the issue is that whatever you're being handed is not enough. That now we are looking purely at implementation of a moving thing. It's not static, right? So if you say, like with a hospital, you need a hospital and you need to continue to replenish it. You need to upgrade now and then, right? But with education, you're looking at, yes, you have schools, but the population of people who are coming to these institutions increases every year, while you still have those ones who are in the system still there. So for me, I think the planning and implementation, another issue which seems to dog us over and over again, is just this. The planning and implementation of something like this. Are we truly going to be able to say that the education system is so solid that you're churning out learners who have had the best in terms of an offering? And unfortunately, where we are right now, it's not that. It isn't. That we're getting by. And for something that is essentially raising future leaders, teaching future leaders, trying to contribute to the educational profile of the country, I think the private sector is probably where you will say that, okay, we're trying here.
When you're talking about ensuring that you benefit from the human resource that you have, I was thinking of the tourism sector, okay? And I was looking at a very key component to the tourism sector. Look at beach tourism, national park tourism, and you ask yourself, you have the people you refer to as tour guides. These people have to be trained.
Yeah.
But there is a cadre of worker in the tourism industry, the course called a beach boy. It doesn't matter how old you are, you're still a beach boy. Okay?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of any attempt to get this cadre of person or people who are interested in being beach boys trained so that they have an understanding of, because they are a very key component to the tourism of that particular at the coast. I pick on this because if you go mountain climbing, there will be porters, people who carry the food you're bound to eat, and the people who are going to help you cook that food.
Yeah.
Then you have the mountaineers. We had a school that trained people literally trained people in that particular aspect of it. There are very many things that we do in this country that are an income earner, they are a career path, but training for it. How much formal education do you need to be, say, a tour guide? How much formal education do you need to be a beach boy? How much formal knowledge do you need to be able to train as a carpenter? Carpenters are needed everywhere. It doesn't matter at what level of society you're in. How much formal education do you need to be able to be a plumber?
So what is fueling policy right now? But are all of these things taken into consideration when we're looking at the system?
If we went to the Institute of Curriculum Development, you will find that they've thought this thing through.
Implementation.
Yes. The usual culprit. Yes, they've thought this thing through. I can never overstate this. The qualified personnel that we have in these institutions will blow your mind.
It's 8:30. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, and we continue with the conversation. We're going to take a look at weather and then traffic, and then come back, and the conversation continues. And we ask you to join us in that as we go along. Right now, it's 8:30.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
The name is NCBA, and the numbers that matter to you matter to us. Get NCBA SME business solutions tailored to your business and start counting the special memories. NCBA Bank. Go for it. NCBA Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
As the Kenyans are roared into the home straight here. 4 Kenyan queens have lit up this balmy Bahamian night.
It's where the rivalry is unmatched, where the soul meets the track, where the greats are distinguished from the good. An arena where the records are broken.
A new world record. It's not just been beaten, it's been obliterated.
A stage where the legends are born. For Team Kenya, the Olympics is more than just a sport. It is our tradition. It's an event that has put Kenya on the roadmap. The Standard Group lets you watch every minute and every action live in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Because we live for Team Kenya. We live for the game. At Standard Group, sports lives here.
Spice FM, Nakuru. The weather with
mostly cloudy conditions is what we're looking at in Nairobi. Highs of 23 and lows of 14. Light rain in Nyeri at 13. Highs of 21. 24 will be the high in a mostly sunny Kisumu, or Nakuru rather, at 15. And 15 degrees and sunny as well in Eldoret. Highs of 23 and lows of 12. Sunny at 20 in Kisumu. Highs of 29. 28 will be the high in Kakamega, where it's sunny at 20. And light rain at 25 in Mombasa with highs of 28, lows of 22. 28 will be the high in Malindi. Lows of 23. It's raining at 25. Mostly sunny conditions at 20 in Kampala. Highs of 26 and lows of 19. 21 will be the high. Mostly sunny conditions in Dar es Salaam. Looking into Johannesburg, it's sunny at 14. Highs of 23 and lows of 10. And mostly clear conditions at 24 in Lagos with highs of 30. It'll come back to lows of 24. 21 and mostly sunny in Kinshasa. Highs of 29 and lows of 21.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Forgiveness is always conditional. Even before God, there's nothing like unconditional forgiveness.
Government doesn't pay you pension until you retire. In fact, they have no money for you. The day you retire, they look for it.
This country is punishing many young people. These young people are more susceptible to be deceived, to be taken advantage of, and they're more susceptible to be bought off.
Let us also talk about where we want our country to go. You know, we are a population of very young people.
We're in a state of capture. The judiciary is under duress. Parliament is in the pocket of the executive. You don't sit and wait for the regime to topple itself. It will never do so.
By the way, let me tell you, these guys are so persuasive. I'm telling you, they can persuade you to sell your grandmother. I'm telling you, they can sell sand in the desert.
City, has anybody on this program said to you as a guest, saying, "Oh, shut up, we don't want to be told what to do"? Has you ever that kind of? Has anybody been
I will not listen.
Bit of advice, because you're working on the premise that we should all pay heed to these proverbs. It's a very suspect notion.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Still quite some on Jogger Road this morning, heading out into the city. Also, Langata Road. Wow. What's happening there, folks? No accidents or incidents. Coming in from the southern bypass, especially Mombasa, coming from Mombasa Road and then from Greater Langata Road. Quite some this morning. We're also looking at Gong Road building up as you get towards Community and then out into the city. Uhuru Highway then from the Nyayo Stadium roundabout out towards Westland in and outbound. Imara Daima continues to give us some of those issues right around there. Coming out into the city as well. So let's watch out for this, okay? Industrial area also. Lunga Likoni packed this morning. Okay, it's Friday. Some of these things expected. So let's watch out for that. If you get stuck somewhere though, let us know. SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice FM. Nieri. Spice FM.
It's getting hot in here.
Oh, everybody steals. It's better a thief who brings something small back. And I say to myself, there's no better thief. A thief is a thief, period.
All those bribes, how much they are getting per year, how much inconvenience they are causing, as much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted.
The truth is, we are a tribal nation. Because if we were not tribal, and I want to go back to this, you cannot continue walking around with a mug which is clean outside and it's rotten inside.
We have become a Fuliza country. We have mortgaged our country because of debt.
You've got one chef working and the assistant chef wakati anatakana koroge unga nini hayuko.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The country today. Thank you for joining us in the Situation Room this morning. And of course, CT Muga with you today. And in the last half an hour, we've been talking about, the situation that we see with education. Every time schools open, we see that there's a problem here or problem there. It doesn't mean that the problem started with the opening of schools. These are issues that have been there for the longest time, but it seems as though, you've been taking the shocks as you go along as a system. So the systemic shocks have been absorbed as you go along, and you say, all right, well, we finished the term, we're all right. We finished the year, we're okay. Let's continue. Again, another thing symptomatic of the country, that you take the shock, you balance it out, and then you move on. You take another shock, you balance it out, and then you move on. And now we're saying that, the folks that are saying that, there's an uproar, it's a horrific situation whereby there's a new education policy on one hand, but on the other hand, there's the inability of schools or of the system to really cater for all of these students who've been welcomed with the 100% transition that we are seeing. And to ask ourselves, what are we going to be able to do about it? Can it be done? Where it seems where we are going now is towards a shared responsibility of education in Kenya. That the government is not going to be able to, until and unless things are streamlined, until and unless, funds that come in are properly spaced out or properly given or properly shared, resourced, until the management of the system is actually put in place. It seems as though the responsibility will be shared, that there will be a parents' association who comes to build a new wing. There will be a parents' association who comes together, or an alumni association who comes together to buy a new bus. It seems like
it's a reality. If suddenly Kenya discovered that it had a natural resource that the whole world needs, I don't know what that would be. It used to be oil, but you know what it is with oil. If that happened and we suddenly had a lot of money in the country, we would be talking about something different. We would say, something, we have money in the country, we can do this. But our reality is that we don't. So since our learners must learn in the best possible circumstances, you can see what the government can do or can't do or is able to do. And if it doesn't meet the threshold of young people getting an adequate education, then the participation of the community, the participation of the alumni, the participation of the board of management has to be at a different level from what it is now.
Okay. as you know, we focus on the money, you know, that schools then are charging, or rather the money that needs to be used for education, that the needs that the system has to get things running properly. And again, I'm saying that these are problems that we're not just seeing in education, but we're seeing them around different sectors of society. One of the issues that came up when schools opened just a couple of weeks ago is the heavy burden of books, for example, that parents need to buy. Now, as we went to the break, CT, you talked about the role that the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development plays in all of this. So there's a development of the curriculum, right? There are folks who have got their ducks in a row here and know what needs to be done.
They do.
But it would seem as though the situation on the ground in the individual school is what seems to put, you know, throws the cat amongst the pigeons here. That's the problem.
You see, I'm a bit confused here because I know for a fact, yes, that the government actually does provide books for schools.
In some cases.
Yes, I know. When I say provides, there is a provision of books for the subjects that are actually taught. I know because it's something I have seen. It's not something that I've been told about. Now, what I need to understand is the books that then parents have to buy, are they supplementary? Or is it that the books that the school, the education system provides is inadequate?
No. Now, this is what we are being told. KICD now has said that the burden of buying so many books should be removed from the parents, and they're sending this message directly to schools. Because here we looked at infrastructure, right? Education policy has been put in place, or rather is being rolled out now as we speak, because it's not possible to have it done since the time it was announced in March. It's not possible to have had it done by now. It's being rolled out in steps, right? There's certain things that are happening concurrently. Now, as you say, there are books that set books by government. KICD says these are the books that we ought to use. What you have is that, again, the word cartels comes into play here, because they will come and say, we have this book as well for mathematics. Put it into your set list. And so we have schools giving set lists of about 20 books that are required to be bought by parents, and it is not necessary. So there is a group, even within the group, who is insisting among schools that these books be put on the list, and parents are having to buy, and the publishers and those said cartels are the ones who essentially end up making money. So you have an infrastructure problem, you have a resource problem, that the infrastructure is not adequate to take in the numbers of students who are coming in. At the same time, they're being asked to pay even more than is necessary at the time when these students are going to school. It is not necessary. So it seems that at all areas, at all points, the system is taking a hard hit. So schools have seen, okay, we need to do something here to be able to help ourselves out. Those who are also providing the resources also realize that, you know, we're in a tough situation. We also need to make a little extra coin here or there. But at the end of the day, the grass is what is suffering. So whether we are looking at cramped schools, whether you're looking at not enough money to buy all the books that are necessary, everybody's playing a part in all of this, and it is an absolute mess right now. It doesn't look good at all. KICD is urging and saying, schools, please reduce the numbers of books on your list, because it's not necessary for us to do that at this point. It's not necessary. Stop doing it. But who is to go down to the ground, school to school? Again, who's going to do that? School to school, and make sure that the list that you're presenting to parents at the beginning of the term is actually not necessary. Who's to do that?
You know, that students need to learn, and that the books are relevant, you know, would even make sense if they didn't change that often. We now have a new education system that has come in, but has the content, what is actually being taught? Because a lot of what is changing is how it is being taught. But is what is being taught change? I mean, for instance, if you're studying geography, what is going to change exactly?
The stuff has not changed, and that's one of the things that KICD is saying, that, you know, in as much as we have a new curriculum, it doesn't mean that the content of what we are teaching is changing. So this rationale that you're saying, oh, well, it's a new curriculum and these are the books that we actually require to be able to teach is this and this. KICD is sending a warning now and saying it is not necessary. We actually don't need this to be done at this point.
The 844 system came about when I was still a teacher. And this is where I encountered this issue of a whole list of books being brought in. The government provided books then. But what I found strange, I was a teacher of the English language, was the textbook that we had used previously and the new text is just chapters that had been moved around, to be in all honesty. Chapters were moved around. What was previously chapter 4 became chapter 8.
Yeah.
What was probably chapter 9 became chapter 2. I looked through and through, and I taught it, so I had to look at the book. And so I asked myself, but why do we have a new book? Is it that we felt that when we were teaching previously, chapter 1 ought not to be what we introduce a subject with, and yet we ought to start with chapter 5 because it will do a better job? But as someone who taught that subject and had been teaching it for some time, I didn't understand that rationale. So I simply continued teaching as I taught before.
So,
because, at the end of the day, what's going to happen? I will have covered all the chapters.
Yeah. The striving should be for things to get better. But I honestly think that where we are right now is maintaining status quo. Let's at least make sure that the students who've come into school, that we can, make sure that they see through an education and get out. How hell-bent are we on excellence? And I don't think we're there. I think it's just a matter of wading through the water and getting out on the other side. And in order for us, and I don't think we can get there with the provisions that we have at the moment. If we're talking about shared responsibility, if we're talking about, we're just trying to get by before you even actually say about now doing it well. You're saying that we don't even have enough to be able to move where we are going. And I'm saying that it's not just education. Look around. Shared responsibility meant that you had private schools. The public school system in a lot of countries in the world is the marker. The private schools are actually trying to catch up with public schools. Public school system in the UK, for example. The public school system in the US, for example. The minority of people take their children to private school. The public school system is so sound that the government has invested a lot. Okay, let's even stay away from the western part of the world. Let's go to the eastern part of the world. China, Japan, the Asian countries. Their public school system is what actually buffers society. Private schools are few and far between. But on this side of the world is that private schools have been set up for two things. One, commercial interest, to make some money. And to do that, because they have seen a gap that has been made by the public school system, and they have had to set up to take in those students who, number one, maybe can afford a little bit more. Number two, are not going to waste their time in a system that's not going to give them value for their money. And I'm saying we should actually be working towards flipping it, to working in the opposite direction. That the public school system should be, today, there are certain schools that I've heard people talk about that they can live on the other side of the world and will go to a particular school in Nairobi because the education system is just solid. And I'm saying that example should be replicated across, it should still be replicated across the country.
Do you know the tragedy?
But what do you need? You need these funds.
You know the tragedy of this discussion is that the very thing that you are talking about is the system that someone like I went through.
And you've been through it, so we're not talking about something
where
that's up in the sky.
People, they go to schools or government schools, whether it's primary school, whether it's secondary school, they were the go-to institutions for the very reasons that you're giving. They were private schools, but they were few. They were very few. You see, I call it a tragedy because you have a discussion about something that ought to be done, and you are not coming from point zero where you've never seen it, but you're coming from a point where it was done and it was allowed to disintegrate to the point where you can't even recognize it as being what it once was. And yet the resources exist. The resource that makes the changes that we require possible is a human resource, and we have that and some to spare. But our energies seem to have been focused as a nation on how every single citizen can get rich as quickly as possible. So everything else that we talk is just that we talk about it, but the energy that ought to be given to ensuring it work isn't given. Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development do their bit. Then it comes to implementation, and those who are supposed to implement talk about it. And when they ask questions, they talk a little more. And we keep going around this vicious cycle of talk and talk and talk, and then a little is done, but we talk more than we are doing. Now, when we say the responsibility then falls on the groupings that I mentioned, it's imperative. You actually don't have a choice. It's not these situations where you are awash with choices and you can deter. You do not have a choice. If learners are to get the best from the education system, the PA, the alumni, the board of management, they have to up their game. And it isn't with the occasional arambe because you want to... No. Something a little more than that, a little more ingenuity ought to be brought into it.
Maybe considering or realizing that you're part of a system, that you're part of something else, not just operating in silos, that here you are making a contribution to education as a whole in the country, and that you're not just trying to get by, because I don't think that, especially when when we look politically, when we look health-wise, when we look developmentally, when we look economically, we're always talking about the future, right?
Yes.
Now, the future means that there are individuals who are coming into this future. There are individuals, there are families, there are societies, there are communities, there are societies coming into this future.
Yes.
The bedrock of that future is an education that they're going to get, whether we want to admit it or not. All those who say education is not important, this, that, the other thing, it is. However you want to look at it, formal or otherwise, whether you want to look at it going to primary school, secondary school, tertiary, and then whether you're going to go to university or not, an education is important. So what quality are you putting in today that is going to yield that quality that you're looking at for tomorrow? Because if we go the way we are going now, not just here, I mean, I think of Nigeria, I think of South Africa, I think of Rwanda, whereby the education that they've been investing in for their youth, for their young people today, they realize, hey, if we have a solid foundation today, we have a very interesting future and a colorful one tomorrow. How important is the future really when we look at some of these things that we're implementing today? Are we taking it into consideration? Are we saying that, you know what, if we don't do the legwork now, we are not going to get the results that we are seeking for tomorrow? And I think in all things, this is what it needs to be looked at.
Think about it. Why do you think many countries around the world, and I mean many, this is not just a Western country, why do you think they offer scholarships to struggling economies such as ours? And who gets the scholarships? Usually it's our best and our brightest.
Yes.
And we are at a point in the history of this planet where they don't just offer you a learning opportunity, they offer you a job opportunity, they offer you an opportunity to stay there. And then you marvel at how it is some of these countries continue to be as good at what they do as they are in every sphere. Because they keep attracting the best from all over the world. That's what they do. They've understood it. So they don't have a problem with where you come from. If you meet the criteria of being really excellent, they welcome you. Now, we do not have that ethos. We don't. When people perform well, it's unfortunate. Most of the time, it is family effort, individual effort.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's like circumstances around you seem to conspire to ensure you actually don't get there, but you do. And again, it isn't something that is impossible. With the resources we have, the accountability factor now and the discussion around what the government should do, we know what the government can do. That story we know. But what else that can be done and is a possibility are the things that I am mentioning. You know, my shock at coming across a school that was self-sustained in all its needs, food needs, whether you're talking about dairy, you're talking about grain, you're talking about vegetables, you're talking about meat, you're talking about protein. a school, and it wasn't one school in this country. I looked at it and I said, goodness gracious me. Even if the school doesn't have the grounds, the compound for doing these things, don't we hear of urban farming? Don't we hear of situations where you could lease land? Don't you hear of situations where, I mean, if you're talking about being creative about what you need to do, there is no limit to what can actually get done. I remember many years ago when I visited Egerton College, when I was a young person. It was a college then. My first encounter with this milk product called yogurt was because Egerton College produced it.
Yeah.
Remember, it was a college.
Yeah.
But clearly, what they trained people to do, they actually did.
So we're talking about value addition.
Yes. They didn't just, everything that you could think of. In that particular institution, everything that those people ate came from their farms. They even had a hospitality sector where they trained people in, and they had a hotel. What am I saying? How do you have a situation where things of that sort existed in the previous century? And what do you hear? It was made a university. I understand. Good thing. Good stuff. But did we increase the capacity of that institution so that they could do a lot more than they're actually doing now? Because if you had farms that produce grain, then what else ought you to be doing? Should we not have Egerton bread?
Sure.
Egerton milk? Egerton, you name it if it's a product. They had cheese and what have you. But I'm not talking about a small-scale village quality. I'm talking about on a grander scale.
On a grand scale. That would even now you're seeing that taking care of your initial needs, but then also supplying outside.
Yes.
And this is of what students are learning in school.
Yes.
Then being taken, value addition.
Yes.
Outside. So it's a direct result of your learning then being applied on the outside.
Precisely.
And then you're able to profit from it.
So you even become an employer because you have an industry that is attached to your field of work. JK, you had trained people in food management for the longest time. The University of Nairobi even trained people. Surely, should this not have been a springboard from where the so-called industries that we speak about, that they also participate in the value addition that we see industries doing? Because after all, they were the ones who germinated all the seeds that end up in these industries. So long as that thinking isn't part and parcel of what we do, our education system will be exactly what it is even 20 years from now, and we'll be discussing the same things we're discussing now. And yet the change is something that is actually very possible. But the units, the variables that I have mentioned, in my mind, and others that someone else can think of, ought to play a more important role. And this is not theory. Schools that are doing well have a functioning units, as I've mentioned, who work together, and you can see them doing well.
So until and unless that is done, this doomsday scenario that we are looking at now,
it need not be there.
It need not be there, but it would appear as though it will continue in this manner for some time, unless something is actually done about it. Otherwise, in terms of getting better, in terms of raising, expectations and actually living to those expectations, in terms of getting better at what we do and making sure that even if you come up with new policies tomorrow, that they will actually mean something, the numbers are actually what would show here. Coming around to more conversations in the Situation Room this morning, and we're looking at the numbers that matter. Numbers in education, whereby you're looking at how many of us are actually able to make it count when it comes to education in this country. How many of us are actually able to say that, we see situations that could get better and better when it comes to what we're able to do. And NCBA is also very interested in the numbers, interested in how you are able to make it work. Numbers that matter to you also matter to NCBA Bank, whether it is that you're trying to buy a house, whether that you're trying to buy a vehicle, whether you're trying to, pay for those needs that jump out at you every now and then. NCBA wants to hold your hand and make sure that even as they give you the numbers that matter in terms of money, that they're also making sure that you have time in the terms of hours to spend with your family, that you can rack up numbers in taking that vacation with your family, that you can make sure you make the numbers count in your business so that your family can be on the right track. NCBA is concerned about the numbers that affect you. NCBA Bank is asking you today to go for it. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room. The conversations continue around about 9 o'clock, and that's what it is right now.
Spice up your life.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Investigations into the death of businessman Jonathan Mukundi and his wife Philomena Njeri is expected to continue today, where an autopsy will be conducted on their bodies. Detectives will be looking to determine whether allegations that Mukundi committed suicide after killing his wife were true or not. Kiambu Police Chief Dennis Wekesa said they have obtained CCTV cameras from the couple's bedroom to assist with investigations. The Center for Disease Control has warned that COVID-19 infections in Africa have increased by 14% in the past 1 week. These as 400 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine are expected in African countries next week.
3 countries are actually experiencing a fourth wave. That is Algeria, Kenya, and Tunisia. Over the last week, we recorded 273,000 new cases across the continent. And the highest proportion of these new cases came from Southern Africa with 48%, Northern Africa 38%, East Africa 7%, West Africa 4%, and Central Africa 1%.
Meanwhile, Health CS Muthui has warned the public against disobeying COVID-19 protocols. Speaking after meeting with his Tanzanian counterpart Dorothy Gwajima to discuss strategies to combat the virus in both countries, Kagwe urged teachers to get immunized because they are dealing with students who are asymptomatic.
The students are essentially asymptomatic, and the problem becomes when they pass it on to the teachers. So hopefully the teachers will accept and agree that they all should be vaccinated. Workers in schools, workers in primary schools, secondary schools, and elsewhere should also be vaccinated. And they are frontline workers, and we have considered them as such.
Gwajima indicated that the two countries will provide guidance on cross-border strategies.
COVID ni tatizo la kidunia, tatizo la Afrika. Lazima tuangalie namna gani halitatudhuru sana, maisha yaendelee, uchumi uendelee, ustawi wa jamii uendelee, kwa kuweka makubaliano yanayotufanya wote tuwe na amani kama watu tunaoishi kwenye eneo moja.
Abel Kipsang now awaits finals, which will take place tomorrow at 2 p.m. East African time. This is after smashing the 1500 meters record at yesterday's semi-finals in Tokyo. Kipsang could most likely increase Kenya's medal count owing to his promising race yesterday.
Sikufikiria kama naweza kuwa number 1, lakini hii lap ya mwisho nikaona mwenye alikuwa mbele amechoka. Venye nilikuwa nakuja final, nilitaka ni qualify niende final. Pressure itakuwa, lakini tutangangana tu kama vile tumengangana leo.
In the meantime, Kenyans are hopeful that Faith Kipyegon and Helen Obiri will win gold medals in the 1500 meters final today and 10,000 meters finals tomorrow. We root out for Bridget Kosgei, Ruth Chemngetich and Paris Jepchirchir to perform well in the women's marathon, while expecting super performance from marathon great Eliud Kipchoge to shut down the Olympics. We continue to wish them the very best. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Still some in industrial area this morning, heading out, actually in and outbound. And we're looking at it quite tight there at Langata Road as well, feeding off the southern bypass, which is smooth in and outbound. On Langata Road, however, coming through from Bomas out towards the roundabout at the Timor. Bagathi Way, however, looks pretty good. You can get through sailingly without too much of an issue. The city centre, a little bit right there at Uhuru Highway, getting to the roundabout that joins with Haile Selassie. But then through to Westlands is looking much better now. Pockets of traffic here and there on Jogger Road as you get to the roundabout at City Stadium and then out towards Landis and into the CBD. We're still seeing some traffic then heading from the Thika Superhighway and then towards Pangani. So we're going to see that traffic right around Ngara. But apart from that, it doesn't look too crazy. Coming out of Westlands, Muthui Road is the go-to road for everybody until the Museum Hill ramp is opened. But then it doesn't look too bad right now. Hopefully today will be a good traffic day. But we're going to keep our eye on things. And just that things do get a little bit sticky, let us know. SpiceFM KE on Twitter through the day. Text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Indeed, at 6 minutes now after 9 o'clock, we're in the final hour of The Situation Room this morning. The conversations continue. Nduoko and C.T. Muga in the studio with you this morning. Eric Latif is away for today. And as we get into the final hour of this conversation, we're going to kick it off with the proverb. C.T.?
Indeed. What has horns must not be hidden in a sack.
What has horns must not be hidden in a sack.
Yes. The ABCD of hiding things. 1, make sure it doesn't have horns.
There you go. That's the proverb for today. 1, the A, B, C, and D is make sure that it doesn't have horns in order for you to hide it. Okay. Speaking of things that are hiding in plain sight, a conversation that was, or rather currently, okay, let's just tick, that has been in the public circles for a very long time has been the disappearance of young people at the hand of the police in Kenya. All right. Now, whether it is direct that the police disappeared these young people or that they were present at the time of their disappearance or their death in this case, those are different elements of the conversation. Yesterday, we got the news, a couple of days ago, got the news of these 2 brothers who died, or rather who turned up dead at the Embu Hospital mortuary. The story was that they had been arrested because they were outside beyond curfew hours, and during the time when they were being transported from point A to the police station, they jumped out of a moving vehicle, the police van or whatnot, and the police did not notice that this had happened. But then later on, they were then found on the ground some 30 kilometers away from, the police post, and then taken. The report that we heard yesterday is that they were taken to hospital where they were then pronounced dead. Today, the report that we are seeing across is that they were found dead in the mortuary. Now, there has been a lot of uproar. There has been a lot of outrage over the last day because it is as though we are forgetting that young people are dying at the hands of the police quite often. And the reasons as to what happened, explanations and investigations as to what may have occurred are rarely given. And that more lives are being lost without these investigations taking place. And their lives are being snuffed out and it goes away like that. Beyond all that is that there is not enough outrage about this. That here we are, young man 22 and his younger brother 19 years old didn't need to have died. But we don't know the circumstances around their deaths. We don't have enough information as to what happened. But I think beyond that now, the cry is that we need to know what happened to them. And we cannot keep quiet about this much longer. That they are not the only ones. That these two gentlemen represent many more young people who have died in the presence of or to the knowledge of the police, and this information is not being shared, is not being given out, and it is about time that happened, or that these deaths unnecessary stopped. Sketchy as they may be, the details right now point to that, a death would have been a bit difficult in the manner in which it has been described. That had they jumped out of these vehicles, of this particular vehicle, they would have had maybe some more injuries on their bodies. There would have been signs of something else that had happened to them, but this was not the case. Because of this vacuum of information, it prepares the ground for an inordinate amount of speculation. That what happened to them? Were they murdered? Were they resisting arrest? Did something happen that needn't have happened? With all of that, the deeper question is, why is an explanation then not being given? We heard something else that came from one of the 5 police officers who are being asked questions now. And what did she say? Ibahati mbaya tu. Ilifanyiwa tu hivyo. Ibahati mbaya. It happened the way it happened. Let's just accept and move on. How long are we going to accept and move on with deaths of young people happening like this?
That's as close as possible, close as we are possibly going to get to the truth.
And that's the problem.
That's like admitting it's unfortunate that these people died. The intention was not to kill them, but they ended up dying. Now, all that would even be taken in one stride if it was a rare occurrence. But the problem is there's nothing like a rare occurrence with the death.
No.
Because death is a permanent loss. And it's not like I lost my shoe so I can buy another one. Mm-mm. This one is gone, and it's gone completely. And unfortunately, when you read and hear about, even if they're in different parts of the country, you hear of stories where there's some harm that has been caused, and it's associated with the police service. What is equally unfortunate is that the mind goes back into the history of this country and the role that has been played by what was then the police force. The mind goes even further back to the one-party system. The mind goes back to the detention centers. One mind goes back to the torture chambers. One's mind keeps going back to ills that are associated with the police. And then one's mind goes back to what we call extrajudicial killings. Now, it's this baggage that you bring to bear on the case of such as this one, where you're told 2 young men are dead. And then comes the story. Jumped up to a vehicle. They were caught. So, to be specific, you asked right. It was after 10 p.m.
Yep.
They were not just 2 people. There were others.
There were, in fact, according to this report, there were 10. Okay. There were 10 who had been arrested in this vehicle, and then they were stopping by to pick up one other person.
Okay. So, there are 8 other people who were there. We haven't heard from any of the 8. Okay. When people flout COVID rules, when people flout curfew rules, we know that taking them to jail cells offers them yet an opportunity to contact the very thing that the curfew is supposed to be helping prevent. Okay? So, let's apply what we're saying in the other hour to this. Let's have a public participatory discussion about this. Fine, they flouted the law. What should we do with them? What ought we to do? Keep them in a cell?
Not recommended.
What do we want to do? By arresting them, you are communicating that they've done something wrong. And there are consequences. But what else can be done under these circumstances? Because COVID, unfortunately, doesn't allow you to put people in confined spaces with others, and that's what a jail cell does. Let me expound on what on why I'm raising the issue. I'm raising the question. these young people, these individuals were walking around an area that is close to where they come from.
Mm-hmm.
They are known. Surely, if you want to build a good relationship with the community that you work among, don't you think that this is a matter that perhaps could be brought into a discussion with the leaders? All right, you have arrested them. All right, you don't have an option but to keep them in a cell, okay? That one we get. But beyond keeping them in a cell and finding them, do you think if they are fined that you will then prevent this occurrence from happening again? Should this not be an opportunity for those who are providing the policing service to actually have a conversation with these people? Have parents, they have relatives, their community. Should this not be an opportunity to say, folks, look, this is not something that we ought to be discussing because you all know what the protocol says. Why am I saying this? For heaven's sake, walking around after 10, much as it flouts the rules, it is not the worst thing that somebody can do.
It's not something that must result in death.
No, it shouldn't.
No,
it's
it
not
really
the worst
isn't.
thing you can do. It is breaking a rule, yes, but it doesn't fall into the category of the heinous things that other people do and for which you can understand their
walking around.
incarceration.
Right,
yes.
right. So now the thing is here, that's where it is exactly, CT. That this, another example of where somebody has died and they needn't have died. Flouting the COVID rules, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they did. Flouting the COVID rules, and then maybe they were trying. They didn't need to die. And the details that we are being given, unfortunately, are very sketchy. So we cannot unequivocally say this is what happened on that night. This is somebody manhandled them. But it would appear that the reasons that we are being given right now don't make sense. They don't make sense. And the bigger thing that doesn't make sense is that so many young people are disappearing at the hand of police, in the presence of police. It's not the first time.
As a result of...
And it's not the first time this has happened. And there have been many occurrences where young people have died and reason has not been given. Investigations have not taken place. The details of their death have not been made public. Nobody knows why. And here is another case where that has happened. And still, what are the parents being told? Unajua ni bahati mbaya. What are we doing? Slowly, there are people who know stories of young people who have disappeared. Last seen in the presence of police. Police don't feel it's necessary to give an explanation about the goings on of this. But I am saying that, speaking up is absolutely necessary. We're not saying that somebody should be incarcerated or criminal proceedings being brought against somebody. Not at this point. No. We are saying we need to know what happened.
We've heard of the police service making attempts to be on good terms with the communities that they live in, community policing, having forums every once in a while to get to be on better terms with the citizenry. And yet, an opportunity such as COVID provides such an opportunity, and that opportunity is actually being missed. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because it's this same community that when a crime is committed or somebody has been killed or somebody has been robbed and you require this very, very, very same community to assist you, it's the same community you're going to go to. Yet the opportunity to build those bonds and to show that, look, we work here, we are part of this community, we want you to help us. We don't want people walking around after 10. It's the law, okay? Now, within that law, those who have that mandate to actually provide security have the ability to also say, look, I'm going to give you a warning. We're going to take your details since we know where you live. This is not what we expect from you. Or because we are going to take your details and we are going to make sure you get home. You're going to report here tomorrow morning and you're going to be on community duty. There's something that we're going to get you to do so that, and not for a day, so that you understand that what you did was wrong.
It's an absolutely important conversation to have. We're going to open up the phone lines now on 0719-012-600 and invite you to be part of this conversation today. Outrage at young people losing their lives over something as simple as flouting COVID rules. What are we looking at in the country right now? And that who must take the responsibility in terms of finding out exactly what happened and then presenting those details to the members of the public. Outrage, necessary what we're looking at right now, with the young lives that continue to disappear, with families having to often talk about the fact that they cannot find their loved ones, or in this case, where they find them, they turn up dead. What are we looking at here? 0719-012-600 is the number to call. Talk to us, and let's hear what it is that you think. Too many a life being lost because of issues like this. Let's hear from you, Tijan. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you, Ndula and Eric?
Very well, thank you, Tijan. Habari asubuhi.
Salama sana. Now, let's start from this case.
Yes.
You decide to take the life of young, innocent individuals just because they are floating COVID rule at night. While you, the same police officers, give security to politicians who are not supposed to attend public gatherings and still violate COVID rules and pose more danger than these two individuals that are working at night. Let's start from there.
Yeah.
Then, that's what I will say for this case. For the next case on the education that we are having at around 8, how comes, sometimes back, I don't know it was you or it was Fit who said that we are in the process of privatizing government. Government is becoming a private entity. But the government is deliberately not upgrading public schools and hospitals. I was trying to do my calculation. If I was to ensure that I spend 50 million per ward as a president for education and construct new furnished schools, either public schools, that will cost around only 50 billion in a year for all wards in this country. If I was to do the same for hospitals, it will cost another 50 billion. It means with less than 600 billion, we can have schools every year in every ward, you can have hospital every year in every ward, you can have roads in every year in every ward, as simple as such. Now, how much does it cost us to have those things in place while we are having a budget of 3.6 trillion? Surely.
Seem to have done the math, and it seems that it can work if you just apply yourself.
Yeah, and the last thing on this Ruto thing we are discussing in the morning, you see, if the deputy president is out of government, let it just be out of government. You people started a good program, and I was waiting my turn to come when you started what you call an alternative voices. And I was waiting for my invitation to come over and give my voice also as a presidential candidate and as an alternative leader to this country. You see, we cannot be discussing with these people who have brought this system to where it is today, that what alternative can they give us again? An alternative they can give us is an alternative on how to destroy it better. So I think that we've been having this discussion every day and every night as we discuss about the situation of this country. It is very clear that the leadership of this country has failed, and this leadership attributes to the system of this country. And therefore, how do you give, you as a media station, how do you give alternative voices and alternative ideas that can at least give a solution? But if you still give chance to these people who failed this system, the best they can show is how to fail it better. So I'm still waiting for my invitation. When Eric is back, I remind him so that we come back to the alternative voices.
Your invitation will come, Tijan. Asante sana. Let's hear from Karanja in Naivasha this morning. Karanja, good morning.
Good morning, Du and City.
Good morning, Karanja.
Good morning.
Yes, how are you, sir?
Fine, thanks.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. Now, let us start with the Moi government. In the Moi government, we had a squad called the Special Branch.
Yeah.
Now, you remember very well, you are one of the victims in 2004. There was this group called the Kwekwe Squad. You remember what happens during the 2008 post-election violence?
They were blamed for extrajudicial killings. Yes.
Surely, even the critical reports addresses the issue of the extrajudicial killing, and this one, the government has done nothing for it, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, a lot of young people had died in the hands of the policemen. Others, they had been tortured in custody. Others had been shot. Reason that they are being told that they are criminals, they are carjackers, they are criminals. So we need the interior government and the coordination government the coordination minister, yes, to tell us what really conspired to the death of two young people in Kajogoma, in Kirinyaga. And then another thing is we have the MP there in Kajogoma, that is in the Kenyaga area. What is he doing? He could have in fact, addressed a press conference. In fact, we lost these brothers, 2 young people.
Yeah.
In fact, I feel very bad. This is a thing that we should condemn it in the strongest term possible. Thank you very much, Duan City.
Thank you very much, Karanja. I mean, look, too many lives. Thank you very much for your call, Karanja. Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Too many lives being lost is what we are looking at here. It's unfortunate that another 2 have been lost, and you've been told, okay, well, sorry about that. Let's see what we can do. And I do actually believe that if we continue keeping quiet about them, they continue to happen, and nobody gives a reason as to what happened, or nobody gives details as to what happened. It will not just be 2. It will not just be 2 lives snuffed out. It'll be 4. It'll be 10, it'll be into the hundreds, and nobody feels that they have to give a reason as to why this is going on. And for me, the outrage needs to be loud. The outrage needs to be, why should this happen? Because it has not been at the level whereby it is enough to prick the consciences of those who may be doing something about this and say, okay, hold on a minute. Let's at least give a reason as to what may have happened, or let's give details as to what may have happened. And then you hide it, and then you say, well, it was bad luck. It shows beyond anything that there's something to hide.
You know, you are assuming that there's a conscience to speak of. Huh? If you look at what we're discussing here, it's how we've normalized criminal activity. We've normalized it. We started by normalizing with the political class. It's criminal when you have the means to actually change the lives of your people and you don't. It's criminal because people end up dying. The death is on your head. People end up being in some unfortunate situation. It's on your head because the very resources that are supposed to get to them didn't get to them because of your activities. My position where the police are concerned, as you may have noticed, I tend to soft pedal. And the reason why I soft pedal and I ask the question, my soft pedaling is asking the question. Yes, there are wrongs that we see and it stops at the doorstep of the police service. But I ask the equally important question. Do we always provide our police service with the wherewithal to ensure that they do all the duties we expect them to do?
But Titi, in that instance, when somebody is in the custody of the police, somebody's in the custody of the police, where then you're going to say you're going to charge them for whatever wrongs they may have done, and then their life is lost. In that moment, are we talking about the livelihoods of police or the care that they're supposed to be affording to that person at that time?
You've asked an appropriate question. I was rather hoping you would ask it. Welfare doesn't mean do they have enough cars, do they have enough boots, do they have raincoats and umbrellas. That's not what I'm referring to. When you train policemen, do you take them for refresher courses? Do you take them for debriefing? Do you have a process that gets them to detox? And I'm using the word again deliberately because the service of policing and doing what they do, man, you require a period when you can get certain things out of your system. Because the question that was asked, or what is attributed to a police officer saying, bahati mbaya, that speaks of a certain mindset. Do we have the capacity to deal with that mindset? Because it doesn't happen in a day. You're not employed and you have it. It's something you acquire with time.
You're conditioned to.
Yes, exactly. And you feel, okay, yes, another death. That is what I mean. Do we provide that opportunity to have them? Because if we do, then we can say, you know something, we've done everything we can and we're holding you. There's no excuse here.
But did they join the force with that conditioning? Because the other side,
No,
the other side
don't.
side of the divide also, CT, is conditioning. This attitude that you have of bahati mbaya, or we can just do things and sweep them under the carpet. They didn't join it with that.
No, they
that
don't.
has been conditioned into them also over time.
Yes, but you really
why are they able to learn this side?
Look,
to be conditioned
there is
into
no
that way and
excuse
not conditioned on the other
for
side.
being part and parcel of someone's death. You cannot excuse it. There can be no reasons you can give which will justify it. None. And if there's a level of condemnation that can be considered the highest, then it must be placed at the doorstep of those who are responsible for it. That I am not trying to water it down. I'm trying to speak a little truth to this situation here. Because we are talking about a situation that exists, and I'm saying it will recur. If you don't address it in the manner that it ought to be addressed, it will recur. And it may even recur with greater frequency. That is really what I'm addressing. If, for instance, you say, let me go back to our previous discussion of schools, all right? The government provided the schools with enough capitation to actually meet the needs that they have. The discussion will be different. But the moment it isn't adequate, that's why we're having this discussion, because students have to learn. So then what do you do? The what do you do wouldn't arise if all you knew was the child gets to school, everything is sorted out. Everything is not sorted out. You are unwell, you go to a government hospital, everything is not sorted out. There was a time when even the stationery on which to write a prescription didn't exist. You had to come with your own little exercise book on which it's as though you're going to be sick often enough. So you come with the exercise book. It is written. It's what you use. It is stamped. What am I saying? There are things which are unpleasant, but they represent the reality. And that reality is what is bringing about these deaths. Because if it isn't these two young men, it'll be somebody else.
Well, it's a conversation worth having. We're not talking about saying, okay, it's another death. Let's see how we can maybe make things better. We're saying it happens. There must be recourse today. There must be answers given today. There must be outrage over such behavior today. So the parents who are looking at their two sons laying dead in a mortuary, they're not thinking about the conditioning and the wherewithal of police at that point. They're looking for answers for the death of the two young men. That's what they're looking for at that moment. And they must. We are having the conversation about, all right, more people disappearing at the hands of police in the country. Where is the outrage? What needs to be done? What ought to be the message that is being put out there? We'll keep taking your calls on 0719-012-600. Be part of the big conversation this morning. I'm going to take a look at weather and traffic and come back and take more of your calls as we go along. It's 9:31.
SpiceFM. Nieri. The weather with SpiceFM.
Mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi at 16, highs of 23, lows of 14 today. It's raining in Nyeri in some parts at 14, highs of 21. We'll see lows of 14 in Nakuru where it's sunny at 17 and sunny in Eldoret, highs of 23. We'll see highs of 29 in Kisumu. It's sunny at 22, 23 and sunny in Kakamega. 28 will be the high and lows of 15. 22 will be the low in a rainy Mombasa this morning at 25. We're looking at highs of 28 in a rainy Malindi as well. It's raining in Kampala at 23, highs of 26 and lows of 19. Mostly sunny conditions in Dar es Salaam at 25. We'll go to highs of 29. 23 will be the high in Johannesburg. That's sunny at 15 and 25 in Lagos. It's partly sunny. We'll go to highs of 30. 29 will be recorded as the high in Kinshasa. It's mostly cloudy at 22. Looking at a warm afternoon in Beijing at 32, highs of 33, and 24 will be the high in a cloudy Paris at 17. It's mostly cloudy at 17 in London, highs of 22 and lows of 14. Coming early into Friday in New York, it's 23. We'll see highs of 30 and lows of 21.
School season is upon us, and parents know what that means. Traffic. And the headache of getting your kids to school on time. Not to worry, Maramoja is here to take the pressure off your shoulders. Join me, Monique, on the Spice Drive from 3 p.m. every weekday to learn more about Maramoja's school transport solution and the benefits it has for parents and school administrators alike.
Losing a loved one is never easy. The lingering memories, the what-ifs, but in all the gloom, we find ways of celebrating them. And here at the Standard Tributes, we aim to give your loved ones that befitting send-off. Visit www.standardmedia.co.ke/tributes today and post your loved one's tribute. In addition, get access to funeral services from our trusted vendors. The Standard Tributes, keeping memories alive.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM.
All right, things seem to be coming down to a dull roar, at least in most parts of the city. Still looking at quite heavy traffic on Langata Road and then also coming off of the Thika Superhighway. But apart from that, seems to have relaxed some, hopefully remain this way for most of the morning. Don't forget, you can get in touch through the day on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127. Hopefully the traffic situation will not get too bad. It'll probably pick up later on in the day. But of course, we're going to keep an eye out for that and let us know what it looks like in your neck of the woods.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
You know, when you see someone being jailed, a governor or two or someone who stole, then people will fear. Because our problem is not the borrowing, it's the stealing.
We've become actually a nation of thieves. The only thing we lack is an opportunity to steal.
The guys who quote the Bible and say I'm a Christian and all that, and you know they're thieves. Return what you have stolen 4 times. If you know that you have property or anything that you have stolen, just return and say, my God does not allow me to hold stolen things.
We are also a reflection of you, because you elect us. You know, we don't get into our office by ourselves. We are a reflection of the people who elect us.
We don't want to go to the streets. We have a constitution that enables us to assert our will.
When the legislature have now been taken as hostage by the executive for whatever reason, we are now bound by what they want us to do.
This is just outside the realms of reality. We have impunity written into the DNA of our political class.
How old were you when you learned that Jeshi Lokop is Jeshi Lawokom?
I can't say it very well.
And everyone knows.
Okay. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
4 minutes to 9 o'clock. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, in the studio this morning with Ndruko and CT Muga. And we're looking at this, you know, who is to blame? With the 2 bodies of these young men found earlier this week. And the last place that they were was in custody of police in Embu County. And saying, you know, why? Another case of this. Why is this happening? And there should be public outcry on the very same and not allow things to continue to happen in this manner. It isn't good. We're hearing from you as well this morning. We're opening up the phone lines on 0719 012 There needs to be louder voices in terms of outrage. Not just because you're saying justice for these 2 young men, but for the many lives that have been lost without explanation over time. And to say, you know, CT is telling us this morning, you know what, we have to look at this beyond just what we are seeing at the moment. That, you know, the lives of those placed in police custody, yes, are being handled by people who have not been properly conditioned to deal with these circumstances or scenarios. We're going to take a call from Jonathan first and then hear from you on that. Jonathan, good morning. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, good morning, Jonathan.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Jonathan from Ruiru.
Yes, Jonathan.
Regarding this police matter, they don't have the conditioning, and it's not by their fault.
It's not
because it's not the police force. Because I happen to have relatives who are, some of them are that generation in the police force. And when I speak to them sometimes, well, what they tell me is they don't have the counseling sessions. What you are told, where if you feel it is confusing you, it's hurting you, go and look for a counselor. You are not funded. It's up to you. You have to volunteer to do it at your own time, not at the time of the work. So, ukisikia inakusumbua, tafuta counselor.
On your own.
Yeah, on your own. Yeah, you. So many of them are, they get into the force young, naive. It's something that you even don't know you're in it. You never know you've become that careless unless someone from outside tells you, now what you're doing is not good.
To the point.
Everybody.
Are we talking about to the point of taking another life, and even if it was a mistake, things happen, right? To the point of taking yes, to the point of taking another life, and that void of all prick of conscience to say this is exactly what happened. The parents of these young men, the public at large, who require an explanation as to what happened. Are we saying that because there's no conditioning, this is the reason why this would happen? Because there is no provision being made for them to handle their job properly, this is why these things are happening in the manner in which they are?
And some of them, they are very willing. They are very willing to work in good conditions. And they are willing to offer the best. But when you go to report to your boss, and he happens to tell you that we don't have certain facilities to handle such a thing, go and figure out. They actually are told, go and use your own initiative. Now, that is when it gets, the guy has already given up. So akienda kuhandle hiyo matter, ataihandle without even psych. So anaamua tu wacha nikusaidie vile naweza. Mali sasa hiyo hata hiyo ya watu kufa hata mimi inanishangaza.
Wow.
Because kwa cell you're not supposed to be dying. In a cell, what is killing you?
Not under the custody of the police. All right. Thanks
so,
for your...
Okay, good day.
Thanks for your comments, Jonathan. Asante sana. Let's hear from Audrey. Audrey, good morning.
Morning, Joe. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Morning, City.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm very fine.
Yes.
I feel like this conversation, the police are not being supported, or mental health, or yes, as much as it's important, I feel like it is being used as an excuse by the police to kill in cold blood. Then they will blame it on, we don't get proper mental health care, because I mean, a few months ago, I think, there was a similar incident. 2 fishermen arrested in Thika.
Yeah.
And then their body turned out in the river. And the 2 men were cuffed. Their bodies turned out cuffed.
Yes.
Then the police claim that they were selling changa. Yet, the residents of the area were saying, no, these young boys are fishermen. And we saw when the police were arresting them. And the reason why they were thrown into the river was because they refused to pay bribes to the police.
Wow.
Now, in such a situation, where does the mental health come in, honestly?
Actually, Audrey, that's at the heart of it. Do you think that the person who committed the crime that you are talking about joined the police force with that mindset, and at the time they were joining, they could do such a thing? What do you think makes a group of people be in a position where taking away someone's life doesn't seem to be an issue? Or do you think that it's a basic requirement for being employed into the police service?
There's something the former spokesperson of the police, Charles Owino, said that, these police officers, when they come in and they get the authority, power inawaingia kwa kichwa and stuff like that. And I feel like that is exactly what is happening in this instance.
Yeah. That here's an opportunity for you to wield power because now you're part of the force. So you join with a preconditioned mindset, it would appear.
Yes, exactly. And then you get drunk in power. I mean, come on. These 2 young men did not deserve to die at all.
No, they did not.
No.
And I feel like when we divert this conversation, we are missing, I don't know, I feel like we are going to be excusing more and more death.
Well, that's the point. Audrey, thanks for your comments this morning. Let's hear from Charles. Charles in Homa Bay. Good morning, Charles.
Morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you doing, Do?
Very, very well.
Okay. Let me start by saying this. Right now in the social media, there is a clip that is going on that one of the recruits, we call them Kurutus, is actually being beaten by another Kurutu. They are in a bus and other people are just sitting down. It's a bus, it's a police bus. I think it's NYS, I don't know, Kenya Police. And he's being beaten by the fellow students too, and the others are just sitting down. When these people are being trained there in the college, it's like you're being tortured. So that thing is being instilled in your mind. When you come out, you are an animal. You're not a human being. First of all, we need to rectify this. We need to go back to the college where these policemen are being trained, so that we make it to be a human place where someone is being trained and instilled with discipline. So when they come out here, they still have the mindset that they were with when they were entering the college. But when they go there, right now, the situation there, they come out as animals. That is what is making all these things happen. They are paying back. When you just do a mistake, they want to pay back for what they were getting there in the college.
So when they're recruited and they go through somewhat training, they are being turned into, what you're saying is, they're being turned into, they're being hardened. And so now is their chance to release this hard stance on members of the public?
Exactly.
Interesting concept. Charles, thanks for your comments this morning. Let's hear from Joanne this morning. Joanne, good morning. Hello, Joanne. Good morning.
Hey, how are you guys?
Very well. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm a bit nasally. I hope you can hear me clearly.
We can hear you very clearly. That is nasally speaking, of course.
I have a slight cold. Anyway, I wanted to contribute to this conversation because I'm really passionate about this, human rights, and I've worked in the human rights space for a while and actually done work on extrajudicial executions.
Yes.
I think everybody who's called before me has had something really legitimate to say, and I get the different points of view because this conversation is truly it's textured, it's very multi-layered, right? First of all, in my understanding and my belief, I don't think that all lives in Kenya are equal, and that's just a fact. The boys are now a trending hashtag. I followed the hashtag very closely yesterday. Actually, I was very interested because I actually come from Kanjakoma, and when I come from Kanjakoma, we rarely trend. We are so few in this country. So
this is the opportunity.
This was the opportunity, and it was very specific. Kanjakoma is a very small area, so I was very curious what's happening, and that's how I got to know the story.
Yes.
And having worked in this area, I know that would not be an issue if you come from other areas, and I don't mean community-wise. I mean income-wise. Right. So it's almost as if their lives matter now more in their death than in their life, right? In terms of policy, in 2017 or 2018, somewhere there's an act that was enacted called the National Coroner Services Act, which essentially provides guidelines of investigation of such deaths. It's never been implemented. There's zero budget for this. And that just goes to show you that there's no political will to investigate, to inquire, to find out why. And basically, it's those deaths that, we don't know what happened. It's unexplainable. If this act was fully enforced in terms of implementation, we would answer those questions. We've had deaths. We've had Carleton Minor who died. We've had Yasin Moyo. We've had so many deaths of young men, and there's still no answer. The court cases, if there are any court cases, because not all of them proceed to court, have dragged for so many years, right? Something that City said really stuck with me about, do these people just, wake up and want to kill, or is that their psyche? I think we're talking about a very deeply rooted problem, which is police office in Kenya is a colonial construct. It is still exploited. That was the reason. We need to ask ourselves, when was it formed and how was it formed? The reason it was formed was to exploit. It was not meant to, even with their rebrand of Utumishi kwa Wote, some years back, it did not address the very reason the police unit was put into force in the first place. And if we don't address that, we will continue to have these conversations of young men continue to be killed, of even during the lockdown period last year, I remember in Mombasa, they were even beating pregnant women because they were outside during curfew.
I hear you.
And so So there's the issue of the colonial construct.
So it needs to be deconstructed, is what we're saying now. In order for us to go forward without this ugliness that we are seeing over and over again, that entire system needs to be deconstructed so that we're starting on a level playing field again.
It's an overhaul of the system. It's an overhaul of the system. If you have rogue officers who are known, ask anybody who works in this space, ask the IPOAs or the IMLUs or those organizations who work in this space. There are rogue officers who are known, who actually look for people to kill. They are known, their names are known. These people will be transferred to a far-flung area momentarily because you've made noise, they'll be brought back. If you've got issues of their training, is humanity part and parcel of the training? Because, to be honest, you're dealing with people one-on-one every single day. If you're a traffic cop, if you're a wherever you are, you're dealing with people. If that's not inculcated in the training, then what are you being trained for?
Well,
I don't care for your teeth and for your height and for all of those things that there. And that is still think about the training.
Yeah.
Think about the criteria for police officers. How 1920 is that? Right? That we're still looking at people based on their physical capabilities, even though they do not have any mental capacity, any humane capacity to treat people. In some countries like Australia, whenever you see a cop, you run towards them.
To them,
because
right.
they offer to them. Let me tell you, I ran away from cops. I ran away because I don't know what mistake they're going to try and find, in my car or whatever. So it's a complete overhaul. It just needs a system shake-up completely. These small tweaks here we do here and there, like rebranding to
a different name.
Getting some blue uniforms, which to be honest are hideous. But anyway, those small things, they will not remedy this grave situation. We'll continue to see young men being killed. We'll continue to know that certain lives. Somebody even said the other day, curfew near poor people. And he was like, I'm in a bar until 11 p.m. and I'll go home.
What?
Right?
Yeah.
But he's not killed. So it's a deconstruction of the entire system, in my opinion.
Thanks for those points, Joanne. Let's hear quickly from Jack this morning. Jack in Eldoret. Jack, good morning.
Morning, too.
Good morning. Thanks for holding.
Yeah, this issue about killing one another. We forgot that mind can be sick. So people need psychology. Every department needs to have a psychological department. Yeah, which is supposed to stress for us,
Okay.
Na kuangalia welfare ya mind. Yes.
Right, Jack, we can't hear you very clearly. If you can move to a place where your sound is a bit clearer and then we can come back to you. Is that all right? All right, Jackie, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
I would like to add on to what Joanne has spoken about, the complete overhaul of the training. Because we know in Kenya, we've seen incidents of people even bribing to get into the police force. So right from the beginning, there's something wrong with how people view the police force. And then on top of that, there's the issue of the mentors for these men, the father figure.
Right. Because
these men who are killing these young people are like their fathers. And if you're a father and an effective father, you would not do that to your own son. So why would you do it to another son? But then that speaks to lack of mentorship from the father figures, because even when we look at this whole situation, I've not heard anything from these government officials who are male top heavy. Our government is just basically men. Why are they not fighting for their children? Why are they not fighting for these boys? We've not had a word from any of them. So there's the issue, the social issue of the absent father. Then there's the issue also of the whole purpose of the police force and how they are trained. Yeah.
Sure thing.
It's very sad, actually.
Indeed. Thanks for your comments on this, Jackie. Asante sana.
Asante.
Well, CT, as I'm listening to this, and I say, clearly we're looking at something that has stemmed from decades and decades, and it has been compounded. And so we look at it in terms of what has happened most recently with the unfortunate and unnecessary deaths of these two, for which we still don't have details. But then we're able to point to other things that have happened previously, and you're saying those two did not need to happen. But there's a recurrent issue here, and that this entire thing needs to be turned belly up and start from scratch with new interventions to stop such things from happening going forward. Because it would appear now that if you have a scruffle or if you have a misunderstanding between you, the police, and the one that you have in custody, the option is to take their life.
It's escalated.
Yes.
What we are seeing is a trend, and it's something that it's beyond worrying, because you suddenly feel that any situation that puts your crosshairs with our security forces, I'm using the word forces again deliberately, not services, can end up in your death.
Yes. Even opening your mouth. You heard what Joanne said. You run away. It doesn't matter. Maybe they were actually coming. It doesn't matter. You see police today, you want to go in the opposite direction.
Now, it's something that ought to be addressed. Have you heard this issue being brought up in Parliament? Have you heard it being discussed in Parliament?
What Jackie said, top-heavy leadership saying anything about this.
One of our callers who asked, why is the MCA of that area quiet? What does it tell you? You see, why am I mentioning the political leaders? Because these are people in positions of power. And because these are officers of the law, they also have power. They actually have a lot of power. So it's like any power structure in this country treats the ordinary citizenry in the same way. So you could argue it's just that they have power at that level and they're able to do things that the other people who have power cannot do. So this is what they're doing. Because after all, if somebody ensures by their actions, because that's what they do, they guarantee that the basics that you ought to have and which are your basic rights do not arrive at you. And they do it repeatedly over and over and over again. Now, somebody else at a different level who also has power, they figure, but even if it is your life, what on earth is going to happen to me? Nothing.
Will have nothing, because you've seen that previously nothing has happened to those who would have been to blame.
The power of example, which we continually underestimate, and the consequences. You see, we talked about consequences. We see impunity, the corruption it brings about. The people who are bearing the brunt of it are our young people now.
They are.
Because this is how it ends.
It is. And this is the conversation that cannot end.
This is how it ends.
Yeah.
If we are going to talk about the people who are dying from COVID, you don't need to. Same consequence. If we're talking about people who are going to die because of hunger, same consequence. Different power structures and power blocks doing what they very well should not do. But it ends up in the same thing. People die.
People die. We're coming to the tail end of the show today. And even as we do that and wrap things up for going into the weekend, let's hear today's proverb, CT.
What has horns must not be hidden in a sack.
This thing that we're talking about now.
This one has horns.
This one has horns. You can't hide it. In this case, we're saying don't hide it in a sack. Bring it out into the open.
Yes.
Let's see how dangerous this thing is and deal with it. Cut the horns.
The question that is often asked is, what do you need to see happen before you realize that the danger isn't in somebody else's hands, it is in your hands? When you hear of crimes being perpetrated and there's an increase of it, what do you think is happening? What do you actually think is happening? These are consequences. If the people who are supposed to curb crime are amenable to some financial consideration so that they can look the other way, what do you think will happen? There'll be an escalation of crime.
There absolutely will be.
And it may sound like it's oversimplifying an issue when you talk about the mental health of our security forces. It is the mindset that you have that will result in the actions that we see you putting into the public. It's how you think.
Because the thought gives birth to the action.
Yes.
Exactly.
It
You would
is.
have thought about it, whether consciously or not, you'd have thought about it.
Yes, the conditioning that we're talking about, it doesn't happen in a day. It is experience over time to the point where it becomes norm. And you also become numbed. So
To it.
the things that you started off with by considering it was a bad thing, it no longer really is a bad thing. It doesn't, it's just, okay, sorry. Yeah, Paul is sana.
These conversations continue on a daily basis from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock every weekday. We have to say goodbye today. Wish you a good weekend. Keep it SpiceFM as you go through the rest of the day. Sugar and Spice comes in at 11 o'clock. Monique will be with you on the Spice Drive. And then the adults in the room come in for you at 7. Tomorrow on 00 Direct, we'll be discussing the challenges of celebrity mental health and the life-work balance. That's 00 Direct tomorrow. From 10 a.m. Keep it SpiceFM. We in the Situation Room, Ndru Oko and CT Muga saying goodbye. Have a good weekend. Keep safe, guys. And we'll keep talking again when we connect again Monday morning at 6 o'clock. In the meantime, have a good weekend.